I am heavy bored.
I may say that the male is entirely hostile. No! You know,
Resources.
life, friends, is boring. We must not say so.
It was okay. Overpriced food from uh food truck vendors.
Dude, I fucking hate food trucks, dude. I fucking hate
So
them.
do so
Like,
do
yeah,
I.
yeah.
When in Rome, kind of, for
Yeah, I mean, if that's the option there, whatever. But dude, like that's one of those like 2010s trends that I'm just like, I don't know what everybody gets out of this. Like this sucks. Like I fucking hate food trucks. And everyone's like, "Oh, get this taco, get this burrito." I'm like, "No, I've been there. The tacos are $7 and
no.
they're literally like fit like the size of my hand, not even. Like it's
Yeah,
the
it's nothing.
yeah, they're like, "Oh, it's authentic. Oh, this is authentic." Well, I don't want it. Like that's what
Yeah,
it is. Like I want the American version.
yeah. We went to this food truck. It was like Taste of Guam or something, but it was just like barbecue stuff, like
Yeah.
barbecue short ribs, chicken. So we got this like three meat platter. It comes with pork belly, chicken, short ribs, rice, potato salad, and like it was like $25, and
Damn.
we were gonna split it, right? This thing, like, I mean, the potato salad was literally like
Like
an ice cream scoop of potato
yeah.
salad.
I was
It
gonna
was like,
say
what?
it was probably like a 2 ounce like container or whatever, those little
Oh yeah,
tiny
it
like
was.
sauce containers they give you at restaurants.
Yeah, and it was like one short rib, which was like mostly bone,
Right,
chicken,
dude.
small portion
Yeah.
of chicken, like everything was small. And then it took like 15 minutes to get the order, and then we wanted a beverage there, so we just water. And they're like, we don't sell water. You have to get it at one of the other food trucks. And I was looking around, none of them were selling anything other than like their lemonade or whatever weird juice that they concoct. Like
Right.
no one was selling just water. And it's like, this is fucking, yeah.
You think like for the price, dude, somebody would buy like a case of water at Costco and sell them for like $6 a pop, like at these food trucks. I mean, that's what I'd do. Like,
Yeah,
oh, you want
but
water?
it's
Well, we only
yeah,
have bottles and they're $6. And people be like, okay, like they just buy it. Like,
they're not allowed to because I guess it takes
oh,
away business from the other
the
trucks that are trying to sell.
bars
Yeah,
and the bars and other restaurants around there. And
yeah.
listener, I mean, I guess we will probably cut most of this out, but yeah, Vegas is we are talking about like a street on Vegas in Vegas being shut down. So there are bars everywhere to get beverages and restaurants everywhere to get food. So you have to like deliberately go to like the food truck area or whatever for the like the event. You have to like literally go to the event for the food trucks if you want that. But yeah, dude, I fucking hate that trend. I hate that, dude. And well, you're a travel guy, but like Torchy's Tacos in Texas. You ever been to Torchy's in Texas?
Um, no, no.
It's basically like a taco truck concept that has been franchised and like turned into a chain, all over Texas basically. And when you go down to Texas local, so anybody in Tech from down listening in Texas will tell me that Torchy sucks, but I think it's pretty decent. Like it's good. Like oh, those aren't as good as this obscure food truck in Austin. It's like, oh, okay. Well, like where do you find? Well, they only open at 2 p.m. on 6th Street. Like, okay, well, yeah, like, oh wow, I'm so glad those tacos are better than Torchy's. But it's the same thing, dude. Like they don't sell like meals or anything. They sell like taco truck style shit. So you have to buy one taco at a time. So somebody like me, dude, that like one taco is like not even a snack, dude. Like that is like,
Yeah,
like one little tortilla. Like, and I'm not talking like a big taco. Listeners know what size tacos are. Dude, and then like you have to buy like four or five of them, and they're each like $6. So like for me to have like a satisfying meal of like three or four tacos, I'm paying like $26 for like just me. And then like yeah, if I have my wife, my child with me, like we're all getting something, like it's okay. Well now it's like 45. You want chips and salsa, it's like okay,
yeah,
50. Everybody needs drinks. Now it's 66. It's like okay, this is supposed to be like a fast casual like kind of like thing.
yeah. Street tacos are like just like two bites. You need like at least seven of them
Yeah.
to like feel somewhat full.
And
Yeah.
I feel like food trucks were getting too bold, dude. Like they were starting to do like weird shit. Like they're like, oh, everything's on a stick. Like they it's like gimmick shit. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like they're like, oh, like or like a weird like I don't know bowl or something, like a poke bowl or something
Mhm.
with like I don't know, just started getting more and more obscure, like random, like weird Greek stuff that like should never be served in like a food truck style for like easy carry out, you know? It should
Yeah.
be like served on a platter, like roast lamb or something. There's, oh yeah, this is like a food. It's like, no, this does not work for like carry out food truck, like
Mhm.
eat while standing at like an event, you know?
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. Yeah, I hate the food truck culture. Dude, the old apartment I lived at, even here in the city, dude, they would have like on Fridays, they would have like a food truck Fridays and stuff. And they would have some like food truck, you know, parked out front of like the main office or something. Dude, I never saw anybody going up to it, dude. Like, and I'm just like, why are they even having these? Like, yeah, nobody wants this, like, nobody wants to go to a food truck to like get carry out and like walk from their apartment to the office, get the food
Mhm.
truck, and then walk back to their apartment. I mean, this was a big ass complex too. Like, you could easily walk like pretty far if you were on the other side of the complex, you know?
Yeah, they have something. They used to have something like that here, like during the summers, just like a food truck. It's supposed to like bring oh, it's local flavor or like community. It's bullshit. I don't
Yeah.
know.
And then, dude, even that, I mean, just the weather the last couple weeks has just been fantastic out here, dude. Like,
Yeah.
this is the real benefit of living out in the desert. Yeah, like basically we get like two springs. Like this is basically a second spring,
Hmm.
like right before like fall hasn't technically kicked in out here. Like it's like
Yeah.
fall is like 2 weeks long out here, which is disappointing. You know, unless fall's a great season, you don't have as long of a fall out here. But like man, the benefit is you do get like two springs. Like it's not as hot, it's sunny, it's bright, the sky is clear, the flowers are blooming because it's not as hot again, right? The flowers think it's springtime again.
Hmm.
Oh
Yeah,
man,
that was
yeah,
nice on Friday with the weather was like it was like in the
perfect.
70s.
Yeah, don't even need a jacket. Yeah, perfect, dude. Yeah. And this will last, listeners that don't know, this will last until maybe November, and then it'll start getting like, ah, I need a jacket. It's kind of like windy and a little chilly, but not like cold, although it does get a little cold, but like,
Yeah, it'll get pretty it gets cold fast at night, but it's usually during the day it's like l- low 80s, maybe 70s, but sun's always out, which is nice.
yeah. Yeah, but it's been great. Yeah, man. I was just thinking, I was like, yeah, this has been great weather. Usually it stays a little hotter, a little longer, but we got out of that too. But all right. What we are actually here today for, listeners, is we're continuing our summer of Irving, which is now the fall of Irving. Uh, and this is another episode of Heavy Board, and we are back with friend of the pod, friend in real life, Eric. Eric, welcome back to Heavy Board.
Thanks for having me.
Of
Great to be
course,
back.
bro. Of course, you know, we wouldn't do it any other way. We have several projects planned. Listeners should be hearing much more of Eric coming. But today we're continuing with Irving here. We got to finish one project before we move on to the next, even though we keep coming up with them.
Mhm.
Uh, and today we're discussing the next part, as promised, Cider House Rules, The Cider House Rules by John Irving. We're talking about the book and the movie. The book, we'll get into this too, listeners. The book was originally out in 1985, I believe was the first time that was released. And then the movie was released in 1999, which when I was thinking about it, dude, I was like, huh, so he had, wasn't the Simon Birch what we covered, like, wasn't that 98, if I'm remembering
Uh,
correctly?
yeah,
So he had a movie come out in 98, 99, uh, and I think that's it. But I was still like, damn, the 90s were busy for Irving there. And
yeah. Well, one was way more successful
that's true.
than the other. Yeah.
That's true. And especially now, like people still talk about Cider House Rules now, which we'll get to with the reputation and all that too.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, all right. So we know our history. Again, listeners, if you haven't listened to the other episodes, go back and listen to those because Eric and I go into our history with Irving, you know, all the usual stuff. So we've already covered like how we came to Irving. So let's just talk about this book, Cider House Rules. What's the history with Cider House Rules, Eric?
I only like I saw the movie, when it came out. Uh, Loved it. but never really did a rewatch until now. So, I always just thought of it as like a great movie. I always loved Michael Caine.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I guess this was probably the first time I saw Charlize Theron,
Yeah, I
right?
think it was one of her
Yeah.
first. Yeah. At least
And
big, like, yeah.
Tobey Maguire, was a big star then. I never really cared for him too much as an actor, but he was pretty memorable in that movie. Good dramatic role, but yeah, never. I knew it was a book. I just never read the book
Yeah, same.
till
Same.
now.
Mine's pretty much the same. Yeah. The movie came out. It was a huge, if you're into movies, you know about it because it was even if you're not into movies, you know about it because it was a huge fucking movie. Oscar nominated, all that. And it's good. I mean, it holds up. We'll get to it. I mean, it still holds up. I mean, 20 years later,
Mhm.
here watching it, 25 years later. Uh, but yeah, mine was the same. I saw the movie because I was into movies when it came out and it was getting all this Oscar buzz, and it's great. It's a great movie, and I never read the book. And again, listeners, like I said, I never really read any Irving until this project here. It was always just a name that I knew and heard about and people talked about. But yeah, finally picked it up. So first time reading it for both of us here. And this is hefty. I mean, this is like a 600 pager.
Yeah, yeah, and it really you feel the weight of it. You feel the weight of all 600 pages.
Yeah, yeah. That's the next one is, yeah, how did it read?
It was, I mean, I really breezed through, I guess, maybe the first 150, 200 pages. Um, and then in the middle, it was a little slow. Um, it just felt like there was a lot of time on the apple farm. And
Yeah.
then again, the last 200 pages, it picks back up.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it was just kind of little bit sagging in the middle.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And Eric and I were texting about this as we were reading through and kind of talking to each other where there is like a lag. Like there's almost like a spinning tires moment where like once he gets to that apple farm and things are churning, and then all of a sudden like the war, it just things feel it just the book feels like it's spinning tires when you're reading through it. The story feels like it, the characters even feel like it, you know.
Mm.
And maybe Irving was, I mean, I don't know, we'll get into that. But yeah, then the last like 200 pages or so kind of fly as stuff picks up again. So you kind of
Yeah.
have that. There's like the first 200 pages fly, the last 200 pages fly, and the middle 200 kind of lag a little bit. There's like a little spinning tires, which is unusual for Irving because I mean, like his stuff is usually so well structured. And not that this is not well structured, you know, listeners, but yeah, it's just unusual compared to like the other two that we've read so far, where we didn't have any of that, you know? So it was just
Yeah.
interesting.
And I think he knows, or at least judging by the way he treated the movie, he knows that he got in a little bit over his head as far as like the characters and their histories and how much he wants to tell versus how much he could fit into the type of book he wants to write. Because this could have been, uh, if he treated all of his characters similarly, it could have been at least 1,000 pages, right? He
Yeah,
could have gone on for another 400, and we'll talk about it later. But yeah, there's definitely a part where he acknowledges it almost by the chapter title. Uh,
yeah.
Having to cut out some time, cut out some characters.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's because yeah, you have this orphanage full of kids. How much, you know, that's something as a creative you got to think about. Yeah, how much do you want to go into each character in the orphanage, you know? And
Mhm.
then how long are we following them for now that Homer's not at the, you know, the orphanage anymore? That's I think might have a little bit to do with the lag too. Once we go back, like whenever we're not talking about like Larch or something at the orphanage, it tended to lag a little bit. Although not always. I was curious about some of them, but yeah, there were parts, and we'll get to that, how I kind of wish that they were part of the story more if they were going to take up so much time or all that. But all right. So that's how it read for both of us there. It's pretty similar. And this one is back to quotes here in the beginning, which you know, listeners, we have to talk about because Irving, you know, these aren't here for no reason. So the first one is from Charlotte Bronte from 1847. It says, conventionality is not morality. Self-righteousness is not religion. To attack the first is not to assail the last. So just, yeah, what do we think of that one?
Um, I mean, well, my first thought was that, it's Charlotte Bronte who wrote Jane Eyre, which is uh, that's one of the books that is constantly being read in the orphanage because it's about an orphan. But
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of this is definitely the quote Irving is trying to connect it to abortion and kind of the battle that Larch and Homer Wells have as far as their morality and spirituality concerning abortion and what the right thing to do is.
Yeah.
Um, and kind of like conventionality is not morality. I think that could be ascribed to Larch as far as him wanting to be practical and do the best thing, even though it may not be moral. And also, the self righteousness is not religion can be applied to Homer Wells, who wants to do this uh, most moral thing, but perhaps it goes against uh, what I guess a lot of maybe Protestant religious people would conceive of as like we should offer humans grace, and abortion would be offering a sort of grace to
Right.
a person, right?
That's what's interesting too, is because for I mean that's a huge plot in the book and in the movie. Listeners that have only seen the movie, that Homer has this kind of moment where he realizes that he doesn't like to perform abortions, and he can't quite articulate why. But it's interesting that there's no religious stuff invoked in this, which is interesting,
Mhm.
for a novel that's, we'll get into this, whether it's pro or anti-abortion or any of that. But I mean, for a novel that is pretty much pro-abortion in this sense, I'm surprised there's no religious invocations because that's usually the one everybody goes to, right? That's usually the one. So I think it makes it more interesting sometimes when people have more complicated ideas about it, somebody like Homer. But yeah, it's strange how like you would think it would, considering Owen Meany, like all the stuff we've read previously,
Mhm.
where religion is brought into it in some way and faith and stuff. It's like, yeah, huh. So abortion was never touched in Owen Meany, and in this one, interesting. I guess we should say that Owen Meany came after this one too.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it was the one right after it, but it might have been a book or two right after this one. Uh,
I think it was the one right after, yeah, the one right after this one. Yeah.
yeah, so interesting, interesting. Yeah. All right, so yeah, we don't want to get too into that, but yeah, that's going to come up. And then the next quote that starts it is from, I've never heard of this guy, H.J. Bolt, MD, from 1906. Said, for practical purposes, abortion may be defined as the interruption of gestation before viability of the child. And I wonder if this doctor might be somebody who Larch is loosely based on.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like John Irving, when he was talking about some of the stuff that he researched, he was going, through the list of thank yous and acknowledgments.
Yeah.
It's from papers, a lot of old scientific papers on abortion and um, ways to care for like female diseases and stuff like that. A lot of like early medical writings on that. So I imagine he must have gotten it from one of those. But it just is a very like clinical uh, sounding quote when you compare it to that Charlotte Bronte quote, which is such like very philosophical.
Yeah, the,
Um,
the the second quote almost sounds like he's defending himself in like a hearing or something, or writing an
yeah,
article about trying to make an argument, like a scientific argument about, what is this for, what's the purpose of this medical procedure.
yeah, and it's so like for practical purposes. So he's
Right.
already kind of using he's qualifying it there, and then abortion may be defined, and then as the interruption, which is just this other word instead of termination, I can
Right.
say interruption, right? He's yeah, it's definitely a doctor trying to justify or defend himself.
Yeah. So I mean it's interesting because I think that like you said that there's the two just like in Owen Meany and all the other ones we cover, the two quotes are maybe in conflict with one another and that's by design. And then there's it's going to come up like you tend to notice how they matter more as you read after you're done reading the full 600 pages, like
Mhm.
and Meany and all these others. So yeah, that was interesting. All right, getting to the actual text, uh again we're in New England, this kind of orphanage. The whole thing opens up with Dr. Larch, and kind of his philosophy, why he runs this orphanage. And it's kind of like in secret too, like it's because again, abortion's illegal. So if he does them, he has to do it kind of hush hush.
Mhm.
So the orphanage is like, oh, we're an orphanage and like birthing center basically, but also they do abortions on the DL, on the down low.
Mhm.
Which of course is great for fiction because it immediately creates like a conflict, not just like, he's breaking the law and could be, have his license removed and be thrown in jail and have this orphanage shut down if anybody found out. And what would happen to the kids. And also it's a huge risk, but also, he has like his principles or whatever. So they make it seem like Larch is, maybe we should talk with that a bit. Yeah. What do we make of Larch as a character since he's the first one we meet?
Oh, I love him. Just like a really great character, and it's again one of I guess in every Irving novel, it's got to be one of Irving's tropes for his characters. Is there has to be one character that's pretty much entirely sexless. They live
Yeah.
their life without any sex. The narrator, Johnny from Owen Meany, and then Mrs. Garp's mother in World According to Garp, uh, like, devoid of passion or any sort of
Yeah.
sexual interest. And and then Larch, who had sex for the first time with a prostitute that his dad paid for. Another trope of of Irving's, which is parents paying for you to lose your virginity to a prostitute.
Yeah, he
Uh,
contracted gonorrhea or whatever,
yeah,
before antibiotics existed. So if you had gonorrhea, you had it for like 3 years.
yeah,
And then
and,
and then forever had like scarring and pain because it would like damage your like your urethra and all of that. Like,
and it was that like punishment for having sex that
right.
he pretty much became obsessed with medicine because he was so concerned about how to get the
There was
pain away from his swelling down from his dick or whatever
that
because of the
phrase
disease.
from Owen Meany, which is telling that Meany was right after this non-practicing homosexual.
Yes,
It comes up in this as well, where the
and
board
I
accuses
thought of that too.
Larch. I marked it page 470. So way, way, way later, listeners, and we'll get back to this, but just to point it out from Owen Meany, yeah. It's when the board members, Miss Goodall and Dr. Gingrich, is I figured out what he is. Miss Goodall told Dr. Gingrich, who thought she was referring to the young man, Homer Wells. He's a non-practicing homosexual, Miss Goodall announced. She meant Dr. Larch, who was on her mind night and day. And I'm just like, yeah, that phrase is back. These asexual characters, this non-practicing, so everybody thinks they're like a non-practicing homosexual or like a gay or
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know. Interesting that that's like the 80s that was big and like all his books in the 80s that's mentioned. Like
Yeah.
the post-AIDS uh thing. But yeah, Larch is great. And of course, he becomes this kind of father figure throughout the book and which is maybe the most touching part of the novel. And Irving does this. He's very good at writing some of these tender scenes between kind of unorthodox relationships or friendships or something.
Mhm.
And Larch is basically like this father figure. Yeah. I mean, of course, we have Dickens right away. There's reference to Dickens, and Dickens was a personal favorite of Dr. Larch. It was no accident, of course, that both Great Expectations and David Copperfield were concerned with orphans. What in the hell else would you read to an orphan? Dr. Larch inquired in his journal. Yeah,
Yeah, I love his journal where he's keeping this like history of uh St. Cloud's, and he always begins every sentence with "here in St. Cloud's," or if he was talking about someplace else, it would be in other places, and he
yeah,
would always have these like rules about this is what we do in St. Cloud, but in other places, here's what they do, like almost like putting these like making these casual assumptions, like almost like fact, like I'm stating it into the record that this is how it's done in other places, but this is how it's done here.
yeah. In other parts of the world or something. Because in this, like Owen Meany, not as much as in Owen Meany, where we have Dr. Larch, we cut into almost his diary entries, like kind of keep coming back up where his explanations for what happened. And like sometimes when he's going into history or whatever. So it's not as much as like a time jump as the Owen Meany, but it is kind of like almost kind of like a journal style. We're seeing somebody's diary too as part of the story.
Yeah.
But that comes up in terms of I think he calls it like a brief history of St. Cloud's, where he's just been like chronicling everything he's done and like all the orphans and what's happened and how they run things since like he's been there. Um, but Larch is a father figure. Obviously, it's going to keep coming back up, but especially to Homer and then all the orphans too. The one I was thinking of is in that chapter 3 here, Princes of Maine, Kings of New England. Um, and it's on page 75 in my version, where I think we have the same
Yeah. Yeah.
version
It's the
of
same.
this. Basically, the trade mass market paperback here. Everybody should buy a copy. It's linked below. That also supports the podcast if you buy a copy through the link. So buy one. This quote on page 75, I want to read. It's one paragraph, but I think it does kind of uh, set up how even Homer feels about him. So it says, for Homer Wells, it was different. He did not imagine leaving St. Cloud's. The princes of Maine that Homer saw, the kings of New England that he imagined, they reigned at the court of St. Cloud's. They traveled nowhere. They didn't get to go to sea. They never even saw the ocean. But somehow, even to Homer Wells, Dr. Larch's benediction was uplifting, full of hope. These princes of Maine, these kings of New England, these orphans of St. Cloud's, whoever they were the heroes of their own lives. That much Homer could see in the darkness. That much Dr. Larch, like a father, gave him.
Mhm.
Yeah. And we should talk about that too. Why don't we go in? So obviously there's this is like Homer's view of Larch giving it even refers like a father gave him, like this bit of hope he got it from him. But we
Mhm.
should talk about they call it a benediction in the text over and over again,
Mhm.
Maybe we should read the part where it first comes out, where it's on that same page, just the paragraph above it. Good night, he would call. Good night, you princes of Maine, you kings of New England. That thing Homer had held in his hand was no prince. It hadn't lived to be king. Uh, and that's Homer thinking about the fetus that he was holding in his hand earlier in the novel. But the good night is the benediction that Dr. Larch would say to the boys' division specifically. He wouldn't say it to the girls' division. He'd say it to the boys before they were like his kind of good night to them. He'd stand at the door and call it out. And the movie does a great job of depicting this so you can get a good visual, listeners. But yeah, they call it a benediction. So just like, what do we think of that? As Larch as a father figure, and then of course his benediction of the Kings of New England thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's like his blessing. I mean, Larch was really like kind of everything to these kids. He was their father, their friend, their teacher, uh, their priest. So, I mean, this sort of makes sense in a way. I mean, it wasn't like a literal, again, there was no like real religion that he taught, but his morality, his way of looking at things. And also, he built up his own kingdom. Like St.
Yeah,
Cloud's was his, and he gathered all these orphaned children as his subjects. And that's sort of it's reflected in his journals where he talks about there's St. Clouds, like my kingdom, and then there's other parts of the world. And it's also interesting that he never left St. Clouds except to go to fight in World War I. So
Right.
only time he ever left St. Clouds, he didn't really he didn't travel anywhere, not even to visit Homer. He was just always at St. Clouds.
Yeah. And they made that clear that he didn't drive or anything like that. So he was like had to take a train if he was traveling anywhere.
Yeah, he just took a train to, just a few miles away or something. It was never long term. He was always in that area.
Yeah. And I just that benediction too, because it's something you think of like obviously Homer, we're meant to think of Larch as a father figure, and Homer comes to think of Larch as a father figure too. Uh, but that benediction too, like the reason I was so obsessed with it, and only because it keeps repeating throughout the novel, but also because I think it's so positive, like it's so hopeful. And even that line that I read about how Homer viewed it as hope,
Hmm.
he could see, that he was giving him this, that you are the hero of your own life here. You are the king of your own life, the prince of your own life, kind of. And I don't know. I mean, just like Larch went out of his way to take care of these orphans, even. And there's a lot of comparison when he's talking about like other places that women can, get like shady back alley abortions. That's a big thing
Hmm.
where the difference between what you'd have to go through if you did that versus if you came to Larch, and St. Cloud's and how you'd be treated and taken care of and how the unwanted children would be taken care of too.
Hmm.
If you don't want them, we'll fine, we'll take them and we'll raise them and we'll, you know, do that and how they're like treated and kind of I don't know. It's just we'll keep talking about it, but yeah, I love one. It's a great line. Good night, you princes of Maine, you kings of New England.
Yeah,
But
and I mean it's also clear that Larch thought that orphans can always uh, achieve great things on their own once they're away from St. Cloud's. I mean, I think that's why he keeps reading them David Copperfield over and over again, and the girls get read Jane Eyre. It's about orphans who go out on their own and are, successful in one way or another. I mean, there's always like tragedy
right, you make the
happens,
best
but
of it. Yeah.
yeah, but in the end, it always works out for them.
And you're a little toughened up because of it. Yeah, like you kind of can deal with more adversity because you haven't, your life, literally the moment you were born, you were dealing with adversity and you didn't even know it.
Mhm.
And they do that at the beginning of the novel. Like they spend like the first chapter, 40, 50 pages when we learn about Homer and how he keeps going to Foss getting adopted. And then like they keep wanting to give him back or he got beaten. So they took him back because they didn't want to let him go to like a house where he was going to get beaten. He got adopted when he was a little bit older, and then they sent him back. They got killed tragically or something, right? Like, and so he just
Mhm.
like walked back to St. Cloud's on his own at like 12 years old or something. So it's like this like thing like Homer it's interesting, we talked about Owen Meany with Owen Meaning or whatever with his name is Homer Wells.
Mhm.
Definitely by design. Uh, this guy named Homer who's looking for a home and can't find one, but then eventually finds, where his home, which was always there. His home was where he always was, kind of,
Yeah.
which is a beautiful sentiment, and we like that on this type of podcast. So we're getting into that, but yeah, it was just incredible that benediction's going to keep coming up, especially as like it's a sign of like maybe it's even a sign of authority, love, all of that good stuff
Mhm.
when he's saying it to him. And it's interesting too because Irving takes the time to show that, yeah, like we're reading Copperfield because some of these kids that are orphaned, they're only there for like maybe even a year, if not. A lot of people when they adopt, they want to adopt babies. They don't want to adopt 5, 6, 7, 8 year olds.
Yeah.
And that's still the case today. But it's like, so obviously the ones that left quickly didn't even hear the whole story, and the ones that were there for years, like Homer and some of the other ones, had heard it like 100 times, because they just got read these stories every night.
Yeah.
uh there's like a differential like thing between it where Homer had like read these so many times because he was like the only one that wasn't adopted for like his whole life, and he's like in his 20s still at this orphanage.
Yeah.
But yeah, all right, let's Larch is a father figure which is going to keep coming up. uh there was another part I wanted Homer's exposure to pain. uh and this involves Melanie, who's like kind of the bad girl at the orphanage. Or no, his first exposure to like porn,
Oh,
when she
yes.
takes him to that abandoned like worker hut or whatever,
Hmm.
and she shows him that photograph, and I don't know. I marked this because I will read it here. So it said, once Homer had understood the photograph, at least he understood its subject, if not its reason for existing. He found it a difficult photograph to go on looking at, especially with Melanie so close to him. On the other hand, he suspected he would be accused of cowardice if he looked away. The photograph reflected the cute revisions of reality engineered in many photographic studios at the turn of the century. The picture was edged with fake clouds, with a funereal or reverential mist. The participants in the photograph appeared to be performing their curious act in a very stylish heaven or hell. Homer Wells guessed it was hell. The participants in the photograph were a leggy young woman and a short pony. The naked woman lay with her long legs spread eagled on a rug, a wildly confused Persian or Oriental. Homer Wells didn't know the difference. And the pony, facing the wrong way, straddled her. His head was bent, as if to drink or to graze, just above the woman's extensive patch of pubic hair. The pony's expression was slightly camera conscious, or ashamed, or possibly just stupid. The pony's penis looked longer and thicker than Homer Wells' arm. Yet the athletic-looking young woman had contorted her neck and had sufficient strength in her arms and hands to bend the pony's penis to her mouth. Her cheeks were puffed out as if she held her breath too long. Her eyes bulged, yet the woman's expression remained ambiguous. It was impossible to tell if she was going to burst out laughing or if she was choking to death on the pony's penis. As for the pony, his shaggy face was full of faked indifference, the placid pose of strained animal dignity. And the next line is lucky pony, huh, sunshine? Melanie asked him.
Yeah, that was really shocking to see in there. I
Yeah,
mean, just, Irving's had some pretty shocking stuff, but I wasn't, bestiality I wasn't expecting
yeah,
that. Um, uh, you know, what I, so for me, the reason that's in there, and I think it calls back a little bit to Larch's early life,
right,
when, uh, he feels guilty for not being able to help that prostitute have an abortion.
right,
Um, and also, he just feels bad for prostitutes. He feels bad for women who have no other choice in life
right,
but to sell their sex for money. And he feels like some sort of moral responsibility for that. They He doesn't really explain it much in the novel, but you just know it's a truth for Wilbur Large that it's society has to help these women out, and I think that's why he's drawn to performing abortions. And also, this photo is of a woman who obviously was getting paid to, like, you
right,
know, for bestiality, which is so disgusting and depraved.
right.
It's like these are the
Yeah,
type of people that Wilbur Larch wanted to help.
yeah,
And I think uh, that, yeah, we just kind of keep getting reminded of that, of um, why he does what he does
And it
because
is a
and it is also it kind of connects to so I think Larch and Garp's mother would have been great. Maybe they would have been non-sexually sexually attracted to each other or
uh,
something, but they had this very much the same kind of morality.
yeah, and it's kind of set up too as like, Homer is almost kind of like I don't want to say autistic, but he's like kind of autistic, almost, it's implied that he's just naive because he's just like an orphan kid who like has been stuck in St. Cloud's his whole life.
Mhm.
So he doesn't like know a whole lot, and this is supposed to, and it's a normal thing for like a boy of like 14 or whatever it is. He's supposed to be at that time for this scene with the older girl at the orphanage who's like showing him this dirty like picture, shocking picture. Uh, and there is like a point in a boy's life where he is exposed to that for the first time, and you kind of don't know what to do. But then like the fact that, Irving always does this kind of sexual bullying. He's
Oh yeah.
very into this. Because it is real. It's a real thing where this is after right after this scene is where that I just read is where Melanie promises to suck him off basically if he gets her file from Larch's office.
Mhm.
Uh, that's kind of Homer's first exposure to this sort of thing. And he's kind of shocked and like doesn't know what to do. And I mean, this whole story is basically about Homer kind of not knowing what to do, like, and he's almost like autistic. Like all he does is just go, okay, or right, uh,
Mhm.
weird kind of way. But yeah, it is interesting. And then we learn that Larch, yeah, knows the woman in the photo after he like finds it because Homer like hid it under his mattress or something. And then we find that Larch recognizes the woman. It was one of the prostitutes that like he had like known.
Yeah, it's and one of the it wasn't the lady that was Eames.
Yeah,
Yeah, is always every time they mention her, it was Eames rhymes with screams,
yeah.
and that's always like very telling, like a woman in pain, woman who's panicked.
And Larch even says a few pages later on page 99, uh, where he says, for a terrible time of life, a teenager deceives himself. He believes he can trick the world. He believes he is invulnerable. An adolescent who is an orphan at this phase is in danger of never growing up. And I don't know, that just struck out to me as this time where he's talking about Homer because I guess this is when he gets caught looking for Melanie's file, right, with her parents, like who her parents are, if there's a file of it or whatever.
Yeah.
And Larch was just like catches him and is just like writing this to himself. What if an is in danger of never growing up if they're chasing this? But I don't know. I thought like teenagers, how you deal with that. It's just right. Larch argued in a letter right before that. It says Larch argued in the letter, a teenager discovers that deceit is almost as seductive as sex and much more easily accomplished. It may be
Mhm.
especially easy to deceive loved ones. The people who love you are the least willing to acknowledge your deceit. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Larch is, uh, I mean, part of the reason why I think he wants Homer to become a doctor, it's for, well, that main reason, like, oh, if he's going to be here, he might as well be of use. And he sees, like, here's someone who can take over for when I'm gone. I mean, obviously, Larch is an old man already at this point. He's what, like 70, maybe?
Yeah, I think he's like in his 60s when it starts, and then by the time Homer's like a teenager, he's in his 70s, and then by the time the book ends, he's like in his 90s.
Yeah, which is like, I mean, for back then, like very, very old, especially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think
So, no, no, go
no,
ahead.
go on. No, I mean I think what you point out is right, where I think it almost shows Larch almost unknowingly adopting Homer because nobody else wanted to adopt him.
Mhm.
That almost by default he became adopted by St. Cloud's and Dr. Larch and the two old nurses that work there, Angela and Edna or whatever their names are.
Yeah.
Uh, it's almost like Larch is. unknowingly adopting him as he starts to train him to be a doctor.
Mhm.
And it almost seems the way they describe it almost is like at first Larch is just training him to kind of be like a midwife, assistant kind of during the things. But then it starts getting more and more. And so by the time Homer's 20, he's basically a fully trained, OBGYN, like surgeon, without even having gone to college or high school, because he just had like a doctor teaching him everything. And then like Larch almost doesn't even realize what he's doing, until Homer leaves, kind of how much it meant to him to have this kind of adopted son, kind of that he was grooming to take his place, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Homer ends up when he ends up leaving, it's like he's just sort of doing what kind of Larch has been preparing almost like all of the other orphans for, which is like when
Yeah.
you leave, you should leave here, like the David Copperfield stories. But I guess Larch at some point thought, oh yeah, Homer's here. He's here to stay, and never really fully realized that he could just want to go away by himself. Like he doesn't have to live there. He didn't at 18, he didn't have to be adopted anymore. He could just go. Um, and I think, yeah, that's a decision he makes. And we also should point out that Larch, when he um, faked Homer's medical records to give him a heart murmur,
Right.
so he wouldn't ever be drafted to serve in any war, which I guess goes back to showing you how Larch felt about World War I.
And like kind of like a fatherly, he feels he has to protect Homer from
Yeah,
something like that. And the
yeah,
big one, no, go on.
something he has like no control over, right? Like
Yeah.
the yeah.
And the big one on page 140, I highlighted this big section just because it's about the fatherly kisses. It's the first time that Larch kisses Homer. And it just really got me. This kind of, the starred for love in a way, Homer and Wilbur interact with each other. Um, and it's kind of long here, listeners, bear with me, but I think it's important to the relationship between Larch and Homer. This is after Homer uh saved that woman's life because she had like a risky delivery for pregnancy, and Homer did it perfectly,
Oh yeah.
by himself because they were like too busy, and Larch was like out on the train, like out of the hospital, one of the
Mhm.
rare times he leaves. And the nurses were like all looking at Homer because he like knew more than them, and he like did it perfectly. So Larch comes to him in the boys division when he's like sleeping, but Homer's pretending to be asleep. Dr. Larch bent over him and kissed him very lightly on his lips. Homer heard Larch whisper, "Good work, Homer." He felt a second, even lighter kiss. "Good work, my boy," the doctor said, and then left him. Homer Wells felt his tears come silently. They were more tears than he remembered crying the last time he had cried, when Fuzzy Stone had died, and Homer had lied about Fuzzy to Snowy Meadows and the others. He cried and cried, but he never made a sound. He would have to change Dr. Larch's pillowcase in the morning. He cried so much. He cried because he had received his first fatherly kisses. Of course, Melanie had kissed him. She didn't do it much anymore, but she had. And Nurse Edna and Nurse Angela had kissed him silly, but they kissed everyone. Dr. Larch had never kissed him before, and now he had kissed him twice. Homer Wells cried because he'd never know how nice a father's kisses could be, and he cried because he doubted that Wilbur Larch would ever do it again, or would have done it if he thought Homer was awake. Dr. Larch went to marvel at the good health of the eclampsia patient. That's what it was. It was like an eclampsia pregnancy. I don't know what that means, but some type of medical risk patient, and at her thriving tiny child, who in the morning would become the orphan David Copperfield. Then Larch went to the familiar typewriter in Nurse Angela's office, but he couldn't write anything. He couldn't even think. He was so agitated from kissing Homer Wells. If Homer Wells had received his first fatherly kisses, Dr. Larch had given the first kisses he had ever given, fatherly or otherwise, since the day in the Portland boarding house when he caught the clap from Miss Eames. And the kisses he gave to Miss Eames were more in the nature of explorations than they were gifts of love. Oh God, thought Wilbur Larch, what will happen to me when Homer has to go? And that's the end of a section right there. I know that's long, but I just think it was just perfect because they were both kind of having these moments. Larch felt so proud of Homer that he kissed him like a son. And Homer just like started crying silently to himself because he felt like his son, even. Like he said, this, it was he cried because he had received his first fatherly kisses.
Yeah.
And I was just
And
like, yeah, what do we think of that? Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and Larch kind of gave his first, like any sort of
Right.
kiss out of love. I
Right.
mean, the only other person he kissed was, the prostitute. Um, and I mean, that's just it's amazing if you think about it. Like how
Yeah.
someone can be so like uh like just non-sex like he writes these characters that it's almost like unbelievable. Like when to think of
Yeah.
them as like just not wanting sex at all, not thinking about it, no sort of love, compassion, longing for another person, just but also like the most like full and like rich characters. Like
Yeah.
they're not dull at all. Like they have plenty of other interests and also they're, very normal for the most part. I guess except for his ether addiction, which I don't think we've talked about yet, but that's always very interesting. But yeah, it's so when you think about those kisses that he gives Homer, it's like the first sense of love uh, that he's had.
Yeah. And for both of them, this first sense of love. And like Homer even describes it, like I just read with, the nurses, Nurse Edna, Nurse Angela, obviously they kissed all the babies and the orphans because they were like the main caretakers of them in this orphanage. And he was always saying, but they kissed everybody, right? So he didn't even think about it, but it was the kisses of a father figure that made Homer feel this way.
Mm.
It is that, especially young boys, I think about this kind of. I mean, there are studies on it, but people always make. I know people will make this argument like, "Oh, father figures are important," and they are. I think sometimes it's exaggerated, right? Like, oh, they're the most important thing, but like, obviously, there's degrees to this. It's not like, oh, your life's gonna be miserable if you don't have that, but what could be, but not necessarily. It's not a guarantee, but I mean, it's just something important about realizing that. Like, I think maybe knowing that you're loved. And maybe this leads to Homer's confusion about love later on in the novel when he's in the love triangle and stuff. Uh, because he never had that demonstrated for him, like a normal relationship or whatever, like most people have demonstrated to them by, through their parents via when you're a kid. And I just never had that. So I don't know. It was just like such a thing where I was just like, man, these two men, Homer and Wilbur, are both starved for love in different ways. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, no, and it's also kind of, funny how like right when they finally get to that realization, whereas he's like really feels like um Larch is a father to him, and where Larch actually does feel like a father, and they're able to express, or Larch is able to express that. Um, that's kind of right when Homer wants to leave. Like he's
yeah.
like, it's oh okay, I've found like my father, so now I can go. Like it was like something would be lost if he left before that feeling.
And even like their letter exchanges and stuff at a certain point when they're exchanging letters later on when Homer's away from the orphanage in the orchard and stuff. And at one point they both admit that like they both remember that time, right? Homer wasn't really asleep and Larch admits that he's like, I love you like a son.
Hmm.
Uh and after that time, Larch makes a point to kiss every boy in the orphanage before bed.
Hmm.
And some of the boys like are finding it like kind of silly, but then most of them are just kind of like they feel the same thing Homer felt, where they get kind of greeted with this, "Oh, he loves me," you know.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I mean, it's going to keep coming back up because we're talking about orphans and we're talking about this complicated relationship between an orphan that was never adopted and the guy that took care of him his whole life.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, that's going to keep coming up. And I guess we should touch on the abortion thing here because this is, for a story where it's so important, like abortion's so important, like you would think it would come up more and there would be even more conflict to it. But on page 174 is kind of right after when Homer's trying to do that autopsy on the fetus, um, where he kind of just it's a strange moment because he doesn't even really, like I said, he doesn't make a religious argument or anything like that. He just kind of suddenly has this realization as he's trying to do this autopsy that like this is more than like, you know, a little bit of, a clump of cells or whatever, to use more modern terminology. Uh, but Homer says, or this is how Irving describes it when Homer kind of comes to his realization. He says he wasn't blaming Dr. Larch either. Homer felt there was nothing as simple as anyone's fault involved. It was not Larch's fault. Larch did what he believed in. If Wilbur Larch was a saint to Nurse Angela and to Nurse Edna, he was both a saint and a father to Homer Wells. Larch knew what he was doing and for whom, but that quick and not quick stuff, it didn't work for Homer Wells. You can call it a fetus or an embryo or the products of conception, thought Homer Wells, but whatever you call it, it's alive. And whatever you do to it, Homer thought, and whatever you call what you do, you're killing it. He looked at the severed pulmonary artery, which was so perfectly displayed in the open chest of the baby from 3 Mile Falls. Let Larch call it whatever he wants, thought Homer Wells. It's his choice. If it's a fetus to him, that's fine. It's a baby to me, thought Homer Wells. If Larch has a choice, I have a choice too. And that's basically Homer's moment of like deciding he's not performing abortions anymore.
Mhm.
So I was just like, all right, yeah, what do we think of that?
I mean, obviously this is something that like Homer just feels in his gut because
Mhm.
he's like, I don't like whatever words you want to use to describe this. Like, it doesn't matter what words. It's still that's alive and you're killing it, and that's wrong. And of course, he has that in his gut because what were the options for him, right?
Right.
What did they do at St. Cloud's? They either take in the babies that are born as orphans or they abort the baby. And so if he wasn't born, he would have been aborted. So he kind of has that like survival, like, yeah, of course it's a baby. I was like, that was me. And like now I'm here. Um, so that's his perspective from it. And it also doesn't prescribe blame uh, to Larch or people who perform abortions. He just he, he thinks, yeah, it could be necessary in some cases, maybe, but it's still you're killing a baby. Don't call it what it isn't.
Yeah, and it's almost framed in the book as a coming of age moment. It's the first time Homer refuses or disagrees with Dr. Larch in his life, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's the first time Homer like takes a stand on anything
Mm-hmm.
for himself because of like his own reasons even. Uh and it's interesting that it was put, Irving does a great job of this anyway. We've talked about it through the previous two books, but like, the way he sets it up where I mean, I only read one paragraph of that, but the paragraphs leading up to it, there is a fetus aborted and it's relatively further along than most of the other ones. And Homer's job is usually to dispose of the the remnants or whatever. They usually incinerate it. But Larch asked him to do an autopsy on the fetus here, and for educational purposes, which is normal for if you're going to med school or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole subplot about the cadavers that he brings into St. Cloud's for, Homer to dissect and learn the anatomy. That's literally how you learn anatomy in med school. People that don't know, it's literally a cadaver, like a human body that you slowly dissect over the course of like a year, okay, to learn all of the anatomy and how it functions and where it should go. Uh, so it's interesting that he's doing it in this kind of capacity as a doctor, and then all of a sudden has this kind of coming of age realization as he's like cutting open the breast, like the chest, to examine and discover, what was the cause, or you do his kind of anatomy lessons with it. And he comes to this realization where he has a fundamental disagreement with this father figure, his father, technically. It's almost like and it's removed a little bit because it's not his real father. It's an orphan, it's kind of an adoptive father. Not even that, but it is. And yeah, I was just like, yeah, that's the first coming of age moment. Homer's rebelling almost. And it's not framed this way, essentially. It's not framed as, oh, he's just doing it to rebel. Like it's framed as he has a conviction, like you said.
Mhm.
Uh, uh, but it is kind of like a moment of a child rebelling against the father, wishes or whatever. So it's important, and that becomes a huge part of the story, where Homer eventually comes to see it Larch's way, even, uh, which is, I mean, it's just such a part of growing up in a lot of ways too, right? Like, I remember in college, dude, like we were hanging out with my roommates, and I had three of them like in my first 2 years of college there. You're all crammed into a dorm room with like a shared bathroom. And
Mhm.
I remember we were drinking, and my one roommate, Zach, he just kind of turned to me. He's like, "Isn't it funny? You think back of all the times that you got in like big fights with your parents, and like every single time, like, you were wrong and your parents were right. Like now that you're like a little bit older,
Yeah.
you kind of realize that actually they had your best interests in mind, and you were just too young to see, too young to understand uh, that, that Larch, because that's interesting too, right? Like, I mean, obviously it's going to be impossible to talk about this without current day politics coming into it, as
Mhm.
is everything, nowadays. But because Larch isn't doing it like, oh, it's some human right. It's some, he's never justifying it through this kind of the language that people use now. He's justifying it through this kind of matter of fact medicine. Like it's a medicine, for people. Like, and it isn't my place to judge it. It's just my place to make sure that like mother and child are safe no matter what the decision is.
Mhm.
He kind of views it as that way. It's not like some grand gesture, like I'm sticking it to somebody or anything. It's like this kind of matter of fact, almost hush hush because it's illegal, so he's protecting his license and all of that. Although again, this is before they had kind of medical board licensings and things, at least like we do now. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it is interesting how it's going to keep coming up because it's one of the major, kind of changes stoked in the main character here. But yeah, I and that's one thing I thought of, and you and I texted this. I thought it would be maybe a little bit more, like maybe Homer would be struggling with it a little bit more,
Yeah.
or something like we'd see more, and maybe he is, we just don't see it. That's why I kind of got this vibe that he's almost like a little off or a little autistic, or maybe he's
But
just
so is
like,
Larch. So
yeah,
Larch is
yeah,
also. I mean, that's the thing. It's like uh, Larch has his whole like, I have to be practical,
right,
reasonable, like, and I have to be of use, right? And he wants Homer to be of use. That's a big phrase that he says. If you're going to be here, you have to be of some use. Which and Larch just views himself as, well, I do know how to perform these abortions safely, and this will help out a lot of poor women who, just through uh, horrible accidents or through no fault of their own, because back then a lot of this was like rape or incest.
right,
A lot of
as
these women
depicted in the
stuff.
story, yeah,
Yeah.
several
Or
times,
or
several
women who were
times,
or women who were prostitutes who got pregnant, which is,
right.
again, they were in poverty.
And it's
So
it's
he
more
could,
for the child in that case. Yeah. I mean, yeah. You imagine, I mean, Richard Pryor or something, like born to like a
in a
prostitute growing
brothel.
up
Yeah.
in a whorehouse. I mean, look at what happened to that guy. Sure, he was a great American icon, great comedian, but like
Yeah.
There's a reason his life was short and it was full of drug use and like yeah.
And I mean, he was like like he's the good case,
Yeah,
usually. It's like
exactly. Yeah.
at least he was like one of the greatest comedians to, ever live,
Right. Yeah.
you know. Um, but yeah, usually it's not that. It's all the problems, none of the success.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
but yeah, no, yeah, Larch just wants to be of use, and I think again, uh, Homer, towards the end, kind of comes back around to that frame of mind, even though, he had to go through his own growing process in which he finds himself a lot different than Larch. He finds love and, I'd say, I guess I'd say almost Larch is almost more like a little autistic than Wells,
Yeah.
but that could just be the ether through some of it. Like we do have to mention that this guy is like huffing ether every day
Yeah.
for what, how many years?
Like his entire adult life, it seems like,
Yeah,
since med
pretty much
school.
since med school. So
And he's in his
what?
like 60s, 70s when we meet him, so he like carries a bottle of ether with him.
Yeah, so about for 50 years he's been huffing ether every day,
And
like
he's a
many
doctor, so he's
multiple
been
times.
careful about it, but like, like all drug addicts, eventually it catches up, like
I mean that sort of erodes your mind in a way, or
yeah.
I don't know, dulls it,
It
especially
was like kind of opiate. Like, I mean, I've never fucked with ether because it wasn't a thing when we by the time I was born. Like,
yeah.
like it was like a paint thinner chemical at that point. It was not something that
Yeah.
people were breathing in for surgeries. We had like serious opiates and other medicines to put you under for that anesthesia. But yeah, so I mean, like, yeah, I mean, it's similar to opiate the way it could dream-like state. You basically huff it, and then you just kind of pass out, and feel a little sick, and like have like these hallucinations and like feel warm, I guess. I've never done it, but I imagine it's kind of how it's described in the book.
Yeah.
And it's after, speaking of ether, he would when Wilbur has these, like Dr. Larch has these kind of ether dreams, he almost, they're described in the book. They're kind of, almost like other dreams where they kind of don't make sense. They're kind of memories mashed together. There's kind of his anxieties about Homer leaving and all of that. It's right at the end of a chapter of Homer Breaks a Promise, which is chapter 5, where Larch is Homer left. Larch didn't want to do the benediction, so Nurse Edna did it, and everyone was like, "What? What's going on? Like, why is Nurse Edna doing it?" Uh, and she said, Nurse Edna, extremely agitated by Dr. Larch's behavior, got up the nerve to march right down to Nurse Angela's office. She was going to walk right in and tell Dr. Larch that he should go give himself a good snort of ether and then get a good night's sleep. But Nurse Edna grew more timid as she approached the solitary light shining from the office. And Nurse Edna hadn't known about the fetal autopsy. But where does it say? Dr. Larch just sat at the typewriter, unmoving. He was composing in his mind the first of many letters he would write to Homer Wells. He was attempting to gentle his anxieties and calm his thoughts. Please be healthy. Please be happy. Please be careful, Wilbur Larch was thinking. The darkness edging in around him. The supplicant hands of the murdered baby from 3 Mile Falls reaching out to him. And I noticed I highlighted this line because it's the very last sentence of this whole chapter where Homer, in the chapter before this, Homer has his, I'm not going to do abortions anymore. Then he leaves the orphanage. And then Larch is thinking the supplicant hands of the murdered baby. First time, I
Hmm.
think the first and only time that Larch would says something like that, or is implied that he's thinking something like that.
Hmm.
Uh, and I wanted to ask here, I don't know, do we think Irving was pro-life in some way?
Uh, I don't I don't know. It wouldn't really surprise me because though he is very liberal, I mean he also seems also very religious too.
He has kind of
Um,
those boomer raised in the church things that like
which
never leave you. Yeah. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
which can be very pro-life. He was probably, um, maybe he believed abortion should be legal, but maybe he thought himself that it's just not. right? He at least seems to understand that point of view
Yeah,
really
there's a
well.
conflict even, and I think even in something like that, describing even Larch, who's so sure of himself, be like, look, it isn't up to us. We're just doctors, a kind of thing. Where, but then he's having the second thing of calling it a murdered baby. That's very unlike Larch. So I was just thinking about that. Like even Larch having his stuff. And of course, this is the controversy, right, listeners? I mean, everybody listening to this knows the reason abortion is controversial at all is because, one side thinks you're killing babies and the other side doesn't, right? Like, like
Yeah.
that's a huge incompatible difference between that's why it's such a controversy, blah, blah, blah. Everybody knows this. Louis C.K. had that bit about it. Like, I think it was before he was canceled, but it was like in his special, I think, a few years before his cancellation, where he said something where he's like, people are screaming about abortion. He's like, and they're like, oh, they're so upset. What are they so upset for? He's like, of course they're upset. They think you're killing babies. Like, he's like, of course they're horrified. Like, he's like, what do you think they're gonna do?
Yeah. If someone really like held that conviction, like that it was a child and that people were
Right.
killing it, that yeah, it sort of seems like they would be very upset. So yeah, I do get that. That's always like
And
people kind of miss that point.
And I'm interested in that too, is I'm somebody would call myself pro-choice. Like I'm not somebody who is really cares all that much, you know? Uh, but I will say, after having children, there is a hesitancy within me now. When you hear just the idea of it is not like, whereas before I had a child, I could brush it off a little bit more, you know?
Mm.
But now there is this kind of like, well, make sure you think about it pretty hard, like make sure you're thinking about this pretty hard.
Yeah.
Like there is almost like a slight hesitation that you get just from experiencing the other side of it. Having a child and experiencing that joy, blah, blah, blah. But like, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, I mean, most people, I mean, obviously there are extremists out there. Most people are not that extreme about this, although there are some, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just thought that like Irving kind of captured that in between space, right? Where like even people that are like conflicted about it, like understand, like start thinking through the consequences. All right, what would the consequences be, of say this, prostitute having forced to carry this baby to term? Well, like, Larch always talks about brings up that stuff when he was like a young student, basically, and he refused to give the abortion to that one prostitute. Well, she ended up dying because something went wrong, with
Mm.
a botched kind of abortion, or she tried to poison herself, or stuff like that caused infections. Like that woman was drinking that poison and it basically like turned her insides to mush or whatever. So like, yeah, that was pretty graphic. So it is kind of like as a health, like yeah, I mean there's it's not so easy. Maybe some people it's easy to say black and white, it's wrong or it isn't. But then like most people I think are in the gray area here where like, well, circumstances, depends, right?
Mhm.
We don't want anybody thrown in jail, I mean, there's just kind of like it's more complicated than I think most of the political discourse makes it out to be, of course. Uh, and then you have people that like, I don't know, view it as like some like, I mean, a form of birth control or whatever. That's the big one, right?
Yeah, and I mean, that's what really, it's always like that doesn't make a great case for your side. Like when you see, and it's just a few people, it's not
Right.
the,
Yeah.
but when they're out there protesting and holding signs saying, I've had 5 abortions and I can't wait for my next one. And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
that's not the attitude you should be having. That's like, this is
And
something unfortunate and, it should be treated as such and not like be held up as like, this like wonderful thing that society should just applaud you for doing. It's always should be a very personal thing. It's like the, safe, legal, and rare
right, exactly.
tends to be the line on that I
It's where
always
it's
kind of
where
stuck.
most yeah, it's where most Americans are, I think, on
Yeah.
it. It's the safe, legal, rare line from the 90s. And this is kind of in that era of it, like kind of the safe, legal, rare refrain.
And
Uh
Larch does kind of he doesn't bring up religion, but he often his argument for why women should be allowed to get abortions is he makes the case, you're so concerned about the unborn, but why isn't society concerned about the children who are already born? He's like, I have
Right.
tons of orphans here who want good home. Like, where's the government coming in and helping them? But the government wants to come in and say abortions have to be illegal. Like, that's why are you
Right.
so concerned with the unborn? Be concerned with the living and taking care of people who are already living. What about their rights? Which is kind of a point that was always brought up in the 90s too. It's like,
Was it the conservative point almost? Yeah. I
yeah.
remember even seeing things like I would like Giuliani or something was running for mayor, and I was a kid, not even really paying attention for a lot of that. I
Hmm.
remember he was saying stuff like, decrease the abortion rate, increase the adoption rate. That was like a Republican slogan at the time in like the Bush era,
Hmm.
Bush 2 era. Sorry, listeners. I just, vague memories of that. But I think even something like that, like people even pretend that like, oh, it's just so simple. You just go get this kind of, even if you're doing the kind of modern day chemical abortion stuff,
Hmm.
where you just, if you're early enough, it's just a pill you, whatever, and it kind of evacuates the uterus. Even like that is miserable. Like, I mean, like that
Yeah.
is like pain, bleeding, cramping, like worse than, like, a terrible, way worse, horrible period times 10,
Hmm.
basically. Like, it's not like it's gonna eat, like, it's like, and then like, it's like this terrible shit coming out of you. Like, it's like, it's a horrific experience. Like, I mean, like, why
Yeah.
would you should think long and hard about that because that is like, oh my God, like, this is awful,
Hmm.
just physically, mentally, emotionally, like you're gonna be hit with all of that. So I mean, yeah. And I think that's one thing that Irving does here is that he doesn't, obviously it doesn't make it that obvious. So maybe we could make an argument that, oh, Homer ends up doing the abortions anyway in the end. But I think he is this is what sign of a great writer, listeners. He's not like putting an ideology like right on everything. Like he's letting the characters play out. He's letting them have these differences and kind of their own turmoil and stuff. You see even Candy and stuff when we meet Candy, like her kind of regrets and like, how scared she is, how like, you know, and what it costs her as we learn about Candy, you know.
Hmm.
She meets Homer because she and Wally come to get an abortion at St. Cloud's. And then, the cost of that is they had the abortion and then Wally gets sterilized when he gets hurt in the war. So they can never actually have a child together. And they
Hmm.
aborted the only one that they, had. And there's that great scene, like right as they pull up, where like Wally kind of turns to her and he says, we don't have to do this. Like, I want to have a baby with you. Like, I want to marry you. Like, we don't have to do it this way, we don't have to hide and be ashamed at all. But
Hmm.
and then it kind of takes that away from them, right? It takes their chance of being a happy family together away. And of course they don't know that at the time. Again, kind of a cosmic irony and whatever. But yeah. And this is gonna keep coming up, but I figured we should just touch on it, because that's gonna happen. It's gonna keep coming up. It's all throughout the novel. The abortion is a huge part of this story. Uh, One thing I did notice is this is about like 200 pages in, 250 pages, and I was like, why are all the dates missing the last number?
Yeah.
It's always like 1940 blank or 1930 blank or 1950 blank. Like,
Yeah. It's 1940 something, 19. Yeah. It's always, it didn't, I, I guess in a way, it's sort of like it keeps early on, it keeps the dates vague and doesn't really matter. But once you get to 1940, something,
with the
and
war, yeah.
yeah, and it's like, okay, well, like uh, Pearl Harbor was bombed. This is not
Yeah.
1940 something. This is December 7th, 1941. We know that. Like you don't have to be vague about it anymore. So I
Yeah.
just thought that was odd. Yeah. I didn't know what to make of it once it started getting into like very obvious dates that we could know what year it is. Right.
Yeah. And I mean, that my one thing is like, I don't know what it added to it. And I kept trying to figure out is like, is it trying to be like, Larch's kind of vague, hazy, ether-filled memory, doesn't quite know the date exactly.
Mhm.
Something like that. I
That,
don't know.
that could be it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I was trying to figure out why Irving would do that, why I would make kind of an artistic choice like that. But yeah. All right, let's get to Candy and Wally here. Uh, Coming into the orphanage to get an abortion. Uh, what do we what do we think of Candy and Wally?
Uh, didn't like Wally. Candy. Uh, Candy had her moments, but ultimately, I mean, I just yeah, you can't trust her.
Yeah,
You can't. Yeah, you can't trust her. I just. I mean, their story is very sad, and it's always without the war, there wouldn't be like a lot of that plot wouldn't happen.
right.
Um, but
Almost
yeah, I
like
mean,
she uses Homer in a way,
oh yeah,
and
hmm
Homer is too inexperienced to know what's going on. He does
yeah.
figure it out eventually, but it takes him like 20 years. So, but yeah,
It's like she took over for Melanie, for that sexual bullying in a way. Um, yeah, a lot of sexual bullying with Homer actually. Once he gets to the orchard, there's Pettigrew.
oh yeah,
Deborah, is that her name?
one of the workers' daughters at the orchard is like, they go on double dates with Wally and Candy
Yeah,
because Homer really loves Candy, but she's in love with Wally and they're in a relationship, blah blah blah. They've been like, high school sweethearts or whatever, small town Maine. Uh, it's almost like Homer didn't even stand a chance, but he doesn't know that. Uh,
yeah, Deborah Pettigrew. Uh, yeah, that was this girl. They go on a date in the drive-in, and she sort of invites him to make out with her, but then scolds him if he puts his hand in the wrong place,
right.
and like kind of and keeps inviting him to go out and kind of leads him on in a way like
This is it,
it's very
almost autistic the way Homer, and I get it's supposed to show that he's been cut off from the rest of the world and like normal socialization. His sexual socialization was from Melanie, who was like this sexual bully, older than him at the orphanage, exposed him to like nasty bestiality, like porn or whatever. And so he doesn't quite know what like normal courting is in like the real world. And it's kind of like this, he's learning about it. It comes up with the race stuff too, like when he's like hanging with the migrant workers that like pick the apple at the orchards or whatever, and he's like explaining things to him because he's naive. He doesn't even understand that like there's segregation going on and like,
yeah.
I guess he just hasn't been exposed to any of that because he was just isolated at the world up at the orphanage. But when they're at that movie at the drive-in, where he's living at the place with them, blah blah blah, where he starts crying at the movie. He's watching like some dumb movie and doesn't quite understand. And yeah, and Deborah Pettigrew won't let him, touch her, go further than just a few light kisses or whatever. Uh, This feeling caused Homer, this is on page 265. He said, this feeling caused Homer to remember the affection Dr. Larch had for him, and Nurse Edna and Nurse Angela had for him too. When the movie was over, he realized he was crying. He realized that although he loved where he was, he loved Dr. Larch more than anyone else. At this point in his life, he still loved Larch more than he loved Candy, and he realized that he missed Larch too, while at the same time, he hoped he would never again set foot in St. Cloud's. And yeah, it was an overwhelming confusion that inspired his weeping, but Deborah Pettigrew mistook the cause. She thought the movie had moved him to tears. Candy did too, right? Wally did too. And then Candy, and while I leaned over the front seat, Candy touched his head. It's okay, you can cry. I cry at lots of movies, she said. Even Wally was deeply respectful. Hey, buddy, he said, we know this must all be a shock to you. His poor heart, sweet Wally was thinking. You dear boy, Candy thought. Please watch out for your heart. She put her cheek against Homer's cheek and kissed him near his ear. It was a very sudden surprise to her how much she enjoyed that kiss of friendship. It surprised Homer Wells, too. Despite the little dry kisses that Deborah Pettigrew gave him in abundance, he felt a remarkable difference surge through him at the instant of Candy's kissing him. It was a feeling that rushed him from nowhere, and he knew, looking at Wally's fond and handsome face, that it was a feeling with nowhere to go. Was that what love was, and how it came to you, leaving you no options for its use? Yeah, and I was just
Yeah.
thinking about that. Was that's the first time Candy kisses him, he's getting overwhelmed thinking about his life in the orphanage, and he's realizing that he loves Candy, but there's nowhere to go with it.
Yeah. And it's like one of those things that like I'll say Candy knows what she's doing when she kisses him. She knows that it'll put those thoughts in his mind, and now it's up to him to do something about it.
Yeah, and
Um,
and she's kind of depicted as, she's young enough that maybe she doesn't quite understand either.
I
That
don't know
like,
about that.
yeah, yeah, especially considering she's considered like the most beautiful woman in this town, blah blah blah, small town girl, that's the most pretty girl in the town.
And there's no way like Homer Wells is like completely showing her the you know, not really like he's showing her that he's at least a little like he thinks that she's the most beautiful girl he's ever
Right.
met, probably by the way he's looking at her. I mean, you'd have to think at his age, like she knows. Women know the power of their sexuality,
From a
and
young age,
yeah,
yeah. Usually
like
puberty.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, like I mean, I remember like friends, like older sisters, like they'll like kiss you on the cheek and say you're cute or something,
Right.
like sort of like a diminutive way, but you
Sexual
like,
bullying, yeah.
but definitely you felt like like oh your sister's so hot, like
Right. Yeah.
type thing. It's very real. It happened, yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
So um, yeah, Candy knows what she's doing, but she's sort of like leaving it to Homer, like it's up to you to do something because yeah, she's
Because it is
uh,
kind of not a forbidden love, but it is kind of like it's not allowed because, clearly she loves Wally and Wally loves her and they're happy together. They see no reason to not be together.
yeah.
But then this guy comes in who she's kind of in love with too, and he's in love with her, and yeah, and Homer really does get screwed in this, I think, for that. But maybe because it is supposed to show how naive he is or something. But
Hmm.
I wanted to ask you too, that very last line of that section that I read there was, uh, and he knew looking at Wally's fond and handsome face that it was a feeling with nowhere to go. And this was that what love was and how it came to you, leaving you no options for its use. And my question was, yeah, is that what love is?
Uh, I
Some
probably wouldn't
version
put
of
that
it or
definition to it. I probably
yeah.
wouldn't put that definition to it. I think, I mean, because like so that like for its use, right?
Yeah.
Uh, like
Again, Wilbur
again,
Larch coming in. Yeah.
yeah, so it's this very like practical way of that Homer's kind of autistic brain
Yeah.
will like view love. Like, oh wait, what purpose does it fill? I gotta have like it's gotta check a box. It's gotta be rational. I just don't think love is like something you can really rationalize or put into a box and completely define it. It's one of
Right.
those terms that yeah, um, there'd be many evolving definitions for.
And and maybe it's Irving's way of showing that, maybe a little later than most people discover it because Homer was, cut off from the world at the orphanage till he was like 20. Well, I think he's supposed to be 20 when he leaves.
Mhm.
But maybe because it's supposed to show that that is a life lesson that you usually get when you're like a young teenager, your first kind of, loving someone who doesn't love you back, right?
Mhm.
that's like, a kind of maturity, a coming of age thing that most people go through, right? You eventually fall in love with someone that doesn't love you back, and that's hard, that hurts, blah blah blah. Maybe that's Irving's way of showing that, like, Homer, who's this kind of naive, sheltered, not even like he was purposely sheltered, it was just because he was an orphan stuck up there, is figuring that out like maybe too late or something. He's like asking himself, was that what love was? Like this kind of yearning and unable to act on it.
Hmm.
And yeah, so he's almost confused about love from this point on. And I mean, not like candy helps it. But that's what I wanted to ask too. But going off this scene, like, would we call this a love story?
Uh, yeah, a little bit, uh, but mostly, um, mostly not, because it really is like unfortunate accidents that make the love happen, and even then, it's like a hesitant kind of love
Yeah.
because there's parts where it's like Wally's technically missing for a while, when their love develops, and so it's like does I don't know if Candy can actually fully love Homer because she knows that there's a possibility her husband's still alive, and he is, but he's also paralyzed from the waist down. They can't have kids.
Right.
Um, he has like you know uh, other problems that are associated with him having been in the war.
Yeah, he's sterilized
So
from the infection that he got in his bladder. And he's paralyzed. So, I mean, when you're paralyzed from the waist down, I mean, you forever need help shitting, wiping your ass, showering, getting moving, or, all of this. Like, uh, horrific, horrific. Yeah.
so yeah, it has to be a secret love,
Yeah.
which I guess is sort of like very like maybe even more romantic in a way because
Yeah.
they can't do anything about it. Um, but still, just very it's all like filled with tragedy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Could we take a piss break?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Let's do it.
Okay, cool.
All right. So this is again coming back to the Princes of Maine, Kings of New England, where on page 268 to 269, there's this moment where Homer's explaining to Wally and Candy about the orphanage, right? Because he learns that Curly was adopted by the druggist family, one of the other orphans.
Mhm.
Uh, where a druggist thought Homer Wells. He'd been upset enough by the news to talk about it with Wally and Candy. They'd sat in the moonlight earlier that evening, throwing snails off Ray Kendall's dock. Ploink, ploink went the periwinkles. Homer Wells talked and talked. He told them about the litany, let us be happy for Curly Day, and so forth. He tried to explain how it had felt to be addressed as a prince of Maine, as a king of New England.
Mhm.
I guess I imagined someone who looked like you, Homer said to Wally. Candy remembered that Dr. Larch had said this to her, too, that he told her that her babies would be these princes, these kings. But I didn't know what he meant, she said. I mean, he was nice, but it was unimaginable. It still is unimaginable to me, Wally said. I mean, what you saw, he said to Homer, what all of you imagined. It must have been different for each of you. Wally was unwilling to accept the notion that someone who looked like himself would ever be adequate to the expression. It sounds a little mocking, Candy said. I just can't see what he meant. Yeah, Wally agreed. It sounds a little cynical. Maybe it was, said Homer Wells. Maybe he said it for himself and not for us. And I was just thinking, what do we think about that?
Well, I mean, I again the words used to describe it, like at first it was a benediction, now it's litany. These are
Yeah,
both like very like these are church terms.
yeah.
Um, and so however he meant it, I think Homer is always going to take it as um, something positive, not something cynical. And I guess if it did benefit, I'm sure it did benefit Larch also. He did enjoy saying it because he wanted to think of himself as doing good, being of use, and raising, princes and kings, like upstanding members of society. But yeah, again, I think it's taken very religious,
Yeah.
uh, as kind of an expression of Larch being the like a moral figure for Homer, which probably is why it's kind of very difficult for him to make that choice against performing abortions, which is like one of the things that Larch preaches as being of use and of good use for society.
Yeah, there's this brief line that I don't even think I marked, but it's towards the end when Homer comes back to St. Cloud's and Nurse Edna tells him that like his heart condition wasn't real, you know?
Yeah.
And she says this one line that I think is something like, Wilbur was worried about his own heart more than yours, I think. You know,
Mhm.
that's what it was a metaphor for. He said you had a heart condition because he was worried about his own heart, meaning, his love for Homer Wells to see this poor orphan boy get slaughtered in a war, or something like because he loved him like a son in that way. Yeah. I mean, and I would say, I don't think it's cynical at all. The benediction, Princes of
Yeah.
Maine, Kings of New England. I think it is kind of a hopeful thing. And maybe he did say it for himself, but it is kind of a hopeful phrase for a young boy to be told that you're going to grow up to be a Prince of Maine or a King of New England. If it's somebody who's in like a loving family, maybe it's spoiling or something like that, but if you're an orphan, nobody's saying that to you ever, except for this Dr. Larch.
Yeah.
And just to have, well, he believes in you, somebody believes in you. Whereas, if you're in a loving family, you have your parents, your family believes in you already. But if you're just an orphan, to hear that every night, even if you don't even think about it. Like a lot of the kids are too young to realize what it is. But then as Homer gets older, he starts to think about it more and more, because he heard it every night of his life,
Mhm.
pretty much. And then he's like, oh, maybe it was, maybe he said it for himself and not for us. And then, yeah, he tells him about Melanie and like his kind of stuff. Goodnight Fuzzy tells him about how he had to lie and it was hard for him to tell the little ones that Fuzzy died. And instead, they told him that he was adopted. And then
Mhm.
later on in that same thing, he says, Curly Day was the first boy I circumcised, Homer Wells announced, just to change the subject from Fuzzy Stone. Yeah. So yeah, just it's gonna keep coming up that benediction because it ends the whole novel too. Very Irving.
Yeah, when
Uh,
he announced the Curly Day was the first boy I circumcised, he also says Curly was the first one. I made it a little lopsided.
yeah, yeah. He's
So
like talk.
yeah, I messed up a little bit.
Yeah,
It
which is
was
like which is a common bit. It used to be a common bit. I remember even in like the Meet the Parents sequel or something in like the early 2000s, there was like a reference to like a botched circumcision for the Ben Stiller character.
mhm.
They're like, well, what does that mean? He's like, oh, kind of like a German army helmet. Like that's like what he said, like the little flap left or whatever, because it was like botched. But yeah, just crazy. And then we do move into this kind of uh it's after he discovers that Herb Fowler is putting holes in those condoms
Yeah, which
that he
is
hands out to everybody.
yeah.
Uh and Homer, there's just this line I wanted to think about where Homer says in St. Cloud's well, he doesn't say this, he's thinking this. In St. Cloud's, he had seen anguish and the plainer forms of unhappiness and depression and destructiveness. He was familiar with mean-spiritedness and with injustice too. But this is evil, isn't it? Wondered Homer Wells. Have I seen evil before? He thought of the woman with the pony's penis in her mouth. What do you do when you recognize evil? He wondered. And I was just thinking that as like, yeah, it's a good question. What do we think? What do you do when you recognize evil? Another kind of coming of age thing, you know?
Yeah, I mean it's really odd because her Fowler is just like this kind of quirky character that John Irving always likes to throw in, one of many on in
Right.
the apple orchard. But yeah, he anytime someone brings up sex or something, he'll throw a condom at them, sort of like I don't know, it just came off as like, oh, he's just trying to brag that he's got tons of condoms in him because he's always fucking. Uh, but then it turns out that yeah, he's deliberately poking holes in the condoms so women get pregnant, and that's evil. It causes even though Homer may not want to perform abortions and sees it as killing a baby, he also recognizes that it's evil to put women in that circumstance of being pregnant when they were not, that wasn't their intention, right? Which is what Larch is trying to remedy.
And this is what
Um,
this is after you learn that he asks Wally about this, because obviously he's one of the few that knows that Candy and Wally had an abortion. And he asks him about, well, didn't you guys take precautions? And Wally's like, I did, but I haven't used, Herb's condom since because it didn't work,
yeah,
And that's when Homer discovers he like tests one of the ones that Herb had like thrown at him. And like there's a perfectly round hole right in the center, which means it was deliberately there. Uh, when he like tests it and it's like, yeah, oh wow, this is evil because you're making people think that they are taking the precautions, but you deliberately kind of hindered the precautions.
yeah.
That's the evil part that Homer's kind of not able to grapple with. And you see, this is a small one, but then obviously it gets bigger as it goes along with kind of, yeah, the Mr. Rose stuff, the incest,
Mhm.
Candy, keeping him at a distance. Like he kind of starts to realize that there are things in the world that like, yeah, and what do you do when you recognize evil? Do you say something? Do you do anything? Do you avoid it? Do you ignore it?
I
You
mean,
know?
in this case, he probably should have said something, which I don't think anything comes of it, right? Like, I don't, Herb Fowler is never like held accountable for any of that, right?
Right.
So, I mean, but also at the same time, if Candy hadn't gotten pregnant, Homer would have maybe he never would have left the orphanage,
Yeah.
right? So it is kind of one of those things that like he does recognize as evil, but without it, he wouldn't even be there. He would probably still be back in St. Cloud's.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, and we don't really get an answer, but it's just something that, yeah, he's coming of age and he's wondering about this.
And they also around this time the cider house rules are introduced.
Yeah.
The actual um, the namesake of the book. And what I found funny about all the rules is most of them are just like not like what not to do if you've been drinking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And there's not really obviously I think the rules in the title's case like don't refer well specifically to these.
Right.
It's like a different set of rules, but these were the specific ones put out for the people who were the apple pickers, the migrant workers. Um,
Almost like Homer's trying to learn the rules of everything as he goes along. The kind of metaphorical meaning of the cider house rules is, with the we just talked about the Deborah Pettigrew, where he's learning the rules of courtship and things like that. There are these kind of rules. And before that, he was learning the rules of like surgery and stuff. Like, there's this kind of he's discovering these certain rules. He's discovering, rules that are broken. I think even like Wally at one point, there's like a scene where they're talking to one another and Wally's discussing like which rules should be broken, or maybe that's with his son
mhm.
later, Homer's son, Angel later. But yeah, there's this constant kind of discovering of rules and maybe something like that when you recognize evil, how do you deal with that? But yeah, all right. So then we get like Homer admits to Candy that he loves her on page 361 into 362, where he said when Candy turned to him and saw his face, she couldn't help it. And I think Wally's off at the war at this point. Both her hands opened and grasped his hands, the blonde wisp of pubic hair flying free.
Yeah, a
That
lot of
pubic
pubic
hair,
hair talk.
because he kept that piece of pubic hair in his wallet
Yeah.
ever since Candy came to the St. Clouds, and he just like carried around this pubic hair, which is funny. Where the blonde wisp of pubic hair flying free, a current of rough air carried it out over the river and into the darkness. Is it your heart? Candy asked him. Oh God, you don't have to say anything. Please don't even think about it. My heart, he said. You know about my heart? You know, she asked. Don't worry. Or you know, she asked. Don't worry, she added fiercely. I love you, Homer Wells croaked, as if he were saying his last words. Yes, I know. Don't think about it, Candy said. Don't worry about anything. I love you too. You do? He asked. Yes, yes, and Wally too, she said. I love you and I love Wally, but don't worry about it. Don't even think about it. How do you know about my heart? Asked Homer Wells. We all know about it, Candy said. Olive knows and Wally knows. But it's just so casual. It's the first time he tells her that he loves her
Mhm.
when they're at like the movie line or whatever, and that tuft of pubic hair blows out of his wallet. And then he tells her she loves her, he loves her, and she's like, Yes, I know. She's like, I know. Don't think about it. Don't worry about anything. I love you too. And then he's like, You do? And she says, Yes, yes, and Wally too.
Mhm.
I love you and I love Wally.
Yeah, what a letdown.
Yeah, yeah,
I love you.
yeah.
Oh, and also this other guy.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Very female.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, and I also like what do you make of like at the same time? Like so we get Melanie kind of all throughout the novel still.
Yeah.
So Melanie left St. Cloud's to pretty much track down Homer. She just knows that he's been picking apples at some orchards. And so we get scenes of her picking apples, getting kind of harassed and mistreated by some of the male uh, workers. But her whole thing is just to like find Homer, like she's in love with him. Like so, during this whole time where Homer's falling in love with Candy and Candy's falling in love with him, like you still have Melanie out there just like searching for this guy that she's been in love with for years.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah, yeah. Melanie too with the character and her journey. It's almost like these orphans are constantly searching even after they left the orphanage for what they had at the orphanage. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I love her description as just like she's just like pretty much shaped like a linebacker type
Yeah.
type girl. It's like big and tall.
Yeah. And there's that one thing, of course, uh, we have all this stuff, but then about doing the right thing, where they basically, okay, he admits he loves her, she admits she loves him, and Wally, and they don't know what to do because Wally's off at the war. And Homer says this thing on page 366. He says, "We have to do the right thing," Homer Wells said. Wally would want to do the right thing, and Dr. Larch was doing what he thought was the right thing too. If you could be patient enough to wait and see, the right thing must present itself, mustn't it? And what else does an orphan do anyway but wait and see? Because Melanie or Candy's just like, oh, we just have to wait and see. I love you, but we just have to wait and see.
Mhm.
But I don't know. We have to do the right thing, and then they end up not doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Which also I was expecting that as we move through here to be like more of a thing.
The kind of the indecision on what to do.
And like eventually it blowing up or something. I was expecting it to like blow up eventually.
Oh yeah. That could
where
break
like
Candy and Wally apart.
everybody knows that this kid is like Candy and Homer's kid.
Yeah. Yeah, and they have to pretend he's adopted when uh just to save face, even though it's obvious even to Candy's parents that it's Homer's kid.
Yeah. And even later there with the kind of 392, it says he and Candy are talking. He said, "All you've got to know is, do you really love him?" Homer said. "Do you love Wally?" "I've grown up loving Wally," Candy said. "I have always loved Wally, and I always will." "Fine," Homer said. "That's all there is to it then." "But I don't even know Wally anymore," Candy said. "I know you better, and I love you too." Homer Wells sighed. So we're in for more waiting and seeing, he thought. His feelings were hurt. Wally hadn't once asked him about his heart. What would he have answered anyway?
Mhm.
Yeah. "Do you love Wally?" She said, "Well, I grew up loving Wally." Well, and she's like, "But I know you better too, and I love you." It's this kind of constantly like going back and forth, leading Homer on. This poor little orphan boy.
Yeah, her indecision is annoying, and that's kind of what it's like during that 200 pages. That's what's really frustrating. That 200 pages in the middle, where it's just like,
Yeah, it's
come on.
basically that for 200 pages. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he pretty much skips to yeah. So I think we talked about this or texted about this a little bit, but um, the 15-year time jump.
Yeah. And that's after we learned that Melanie's gay.
Or I think, oh yeah, yeah, that's
We
right. Yeah,
learned that like she's like just becomes gay, or maybe she always was.
she's like beating up men, and like men are retaliating by beating her up, so she retaliates by beating them back up. Yeah,
And
it's
then
just these
starts like sleeping
bar
with a
fights.
woman, yeah, that
Yeah.
she works with, and then just like is with that. Yeah, they have the baby, and yeah, like you said, yeah, then they come back here with wait, what did you just say before? Where were we headed? Before I
Uh,
interrupted you.
Melon is the 15 years.
Oh, right. The
Yeah,
15-year span.
yeah. I mean, that was just like, I mean, I sort of get why he does it, just because again, this like uh during that middle 200 pages, it just becomes like the will they, won't they, between Candy and Homer, and you just want to jump and find out, all right, what happened, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, their son Angel is now 15 years old.
Yeah.
Uh,
Which irritated me that like we jumped 15 years.
mhm.
I get why, okay, we had to kind of jump 15 years because we were just that's where I think we kind of the 15 years mark kind of takes us out of the spinning tires section. So that's like right around like page like 450 or something.
Yeah,
The last 150 pages move a little faster. But yeah, so we have this 15-year jump. Uh, and I was just thinking, like, even after the 15-year jump, Homer's still in the same spot, you know?
mhm.
And that's where that page 477. Yeah, Candy and Wally were married less than a month after Wally returned to Ocean View. Wally weighed 147 pounds, and Homer Wells pushed the wheelchair down the church aisle. Candy and Wally occupied the converted bedroom on the ground floor of the big house. Man, and I was just thinking, oh my God. So after all that, Candy marries Wally like less than a month after he comes back, and Homer has to like push his wheelchair down the aisle
Yeah.
while he marries the woman he loves. I was just like, what the fuck? I was like, total BS. That's what I wrote in my notes. Total BS, dude. This poor fucking orphan.
But I don't know. Again, maybe that. like Homer, maybe he views love so like
Yeah,
technically defines it so much that he can just easily be like, oh, well, Wally is home now, so my love has to go away. And like, Wally's my friend, so I'm going to continue being friends with him. And he's just is able to put aside these feelings because I don't know, maybe he never really felt them in the true
yeah,
way ever. Because he does love Wally
right.
as a friend and just respects him, and he still does love Candy, and he loves her child, Angel. Which when I first read that, I'm like, is Homer Wells like this uh like Latino figure with the with the name?
Hey,
I'm like,
Jesus Wells, dude.
yeah, I know. I'm gonna name my kid. No, it's on hell. But yeah, he named him after like his nurse Angela,
Yeah,
Angela. Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
And I'm thinking now that we're talking about it too, I wonder if Homer was so naive he didn't realize that like the position he was in with Candy, and then for 15 years, and it's not till that confrontation with Melanie that he actually is kind of woken up to it. Where I
mhm,
was thinking even a few page like this section here, it's interesting from page 477 from that point that I read where they get married. I have notes on 482, 484, 486, 509, like just these last like 150 pages. There's so much was happening. I just started marking stuff,
mhm,
but all about the same stuff where when Ray Kendall dies, so Candy's father dies, because he's tinkering with that rocket in his garage or whatever.
mhm.
Um, in the section I marked on 482, the misfortune of someone you love can bring out the guilt in you. Candy regretted that she'd not told her father about Homer and Angel Wells. It was no consolation to her that she imagined Ray already knew everything. She had been able to understand, by his silences, that he wanted to hear it from her. Not even the death of her father could prompt Candy Kendall to tell her story to anyone. And I'm just thinking of like, yeah, that's kind of like not telling her father. So she couldn't tell her father or her son, and then her father dies. So like she never told him. I was just thinking, like, my God, like Candy's kind of an awful person. Like,
Yeah,
kind of like. And then I marked even then like another piece of evidence, page 486, when Wally punches Homer in the mouth.
oh yeah,
Uh, Because, yeah, it's on page 485 where it happens. Right, said Homer Wells, and Wally hit Homer with a very well thrown jab, the only sort of punch he could really throw, sitting down. Wally, Candy said. I'm so sick of it, Wally shouted. It's time you learned a new word, Homer, Wally said. Jesus, Wally, Candy said. I'm okay, Homer said, but he remained sitting on the office floor. I'm sorry, Wally said. It just gets on my nerves, you saying right all the time. Yeah. And what's implied by this section is that it's implied that Wally knows, right?
yeah,
But nobody's
yeah,
told him in 15 years, and he knows that they're not telling him, and it's been pissing him off. And you think about that too. So you have this other guy that's in your life, lives in the house with you, has a child with your wife, and all they do is lie to your face about it, despite you already knowing, and basically being okay with it enough to like not cause problems, right? Because
yeah,
Wally's in a position where he's grateful too, right? There's like a scene, we didn't go into it, but there's a scene when he comes back where he said he was terrified when he found out he was paralyzed. He thought that she wouldn't want to marry a cripple. So maybe he's grateful that she still loves him and is caring for him when he's in like, a needy person now in a wheelchair. So he might not say anything because of that, but he was just kind of, he punched Homer and said it was because he said the word right too often, but it wasn't because of that. It was because of this stuff, because he was mad at Candy, he was mad at Homer, he was mad at, the situation. And then you think like Candy not telling her father, not telling her son, not telling her husband. Uh, I don't know.
yeah. I mean, it'd be hard for him to tell that something isn't going on, at least emotionally,
Right.
between Homer and Candy. And yeah, there's that scene where uh Candy is talking to Homer, and she says, Wally knows, Candy said. That's what you've thought for 15 years, said Homer Wells. You think he doesn't know? Candy asked. I think he loves you, and you love him, Homer said. I think he knows we love Angel. I think Wally loves Angel too. But do you think he knows Angel is ours? Candy asked. I don't know, Homer said. I know that one day Angel has to know he's ours. I think that Wally knows I love you, he said. And that I love you? Candy asked. Does he know that? You love me sometimes, Homer said, not very often. I wasn't talking
Yeah.
about sex, Candy whispered. I was, said Homer Wells. And then it goes on to say how they've only had sex 270 times, an average of only 18 times a year since, Wally's been home. So they're very calculated about their physical relationship, but I mean,
Right.
it's going to show um, definitely in the way they treat each other and also the way they treat Angel. I mean, Candy is like his biological mother, and she has to pretend that it's just Homer's adopted son.
And Irving makes clear when they first come back, even and that everybody kind of knows
Yeah.
that Olive knows that Ray Kendall, Candy's father, knows, all the workers at the cider house know. And it is one of those things like obviously not everybody, but like a lot of times, DNA is pretty powerful, right? So like when a kid is born, like it looks like their parents. Okay, like and maybe post puberty there'll be some development in the face that's different, but like usually you can tell. Just I mean not always, right? But you can tell just by looking at people sometimes if they're standing right next to their parent, like a little kid, you're like, "Oh yeah, that's your parent." Because you just see the same face or the
Mhm.
facial features, the DNA is powerful, it doesn't lie, right? Like, and everybody kind of sees the baby and like the kid and sees that it looks just like Homer and Candy. So they all kind of know, but nobody says anything because it's kind of like this, rural Maine politeness thing. But they live with it and they bring it out, they drag it out so long that it's 15 years to the point where Wally's punching Homer in the face over some minor thing because it wasn't really about that thing. It was about the building tension between kind of Candy and Homer almost being cruel to Wally by not telling him.
Mhm.
And that's why I was just like, huh, this is where it gets like more complicated. And I was like, yeah, this is part of why I think those last 200 pages, 150 pages really fly because we're getting the kind of blow up of the love triangle. The secrets are coming out.
And then Melanie pops back in,
Yes,
and
exactly.
she sees Homer, and it's just like she's so disappointed in who he's become, doesn't recognize the man she loved, and I think goes on back to being a lesbian with Lorna later, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. It's
she's
yeah,
disappointed.
yeah.
And that whole scene is on page 509 to 510, and I highlighted the whole thing. It's kind of long, listeners, so bear with us, but I think it's important to where when Melanie, it's the call out for Homer, basically calling out Homer, calling him a cuck bitch. And Melanie was the type that would do that, right? So she kind of like has this kind of not even a breakdown, but she kind of like goes upstairs and stares in the mirror for like an hour after she realizes what's going on. And then she comes down, uh, and she says, I somehow thought you'd end up doing something better than bawling a poor cripple's wife and pretending your own child ain't your own, Melanie said to Homer Wells. You of all people, you, an orphan, she reminded him. It's not quite like that, he started to tell her, but she shook her huge head and looked away from him. I got eyes, Melanie said. I can see what it's like. It's like shit. It's ordinary middle class shit. Being unfaithful and lying to the kids. You of all people, Melanie said. She had her hands thrust in her pockets. She took them out and clasped them behind her back. Then she jammed them back in her pockets again. Every time she moved her hands, Homer flinched. Homer Wells had expected to be attacked by her. Melanie was an attacker, but this was not the attack he had expected. He had imagined that he would, one day, when he saw her again, be a match for her. But now he knew that he would never be a match for Melanie. Do you think I get my rocks off embarrassing you? Melanie asked him. Do you think I was always looking for you, only to give you a bad time? I didn't know you were looking for me, said Homer Wells. I had you figured all wrong, said Melanie. Looking at her, Homer Wells realized that he'd had Melanie figured all wrong too. I always thought you'd end up like the old man. Like Larch, Homer said. Of course, like Larch, Melanie snapped at him. I figured you for that. You know, the missionary, the do-gooder with his nose in the air. I don't see Larch quite that way, Homer said. Don't be snotty to me, Melanie cried, her raw face streaked with tears. You've got your nose in the air. I got that part right. But you ain't exactly no missionary. You're a creep. You knocked up somebody you shouldn't have been fucking in the first place, and you couldn't even come clean about it to your own kid. Some missionary. Ain't that brave? In my book, Sunshine, that's a creep, Melanie told him. Then she left. She never asked him about the job. He never got to ask her about how her life had been. He went upstairs to the bathroom and threw up. And that was like that's the scene of Melanie basically confronting him. She's like, "You're a little creep." Like she's like, "You're a cuck bitch." And I don't know, yeah, what do we think of that in terms of I know it was a long scene there, but that's just like Melanie calling out Homer for just what the fuck are you doing? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I don't think she would have liked him even like if he had been doing the proper thing. I think like she
right.
seemed to want to live this like just picking apples her entire life, going from orchard to orchard, being a migrant worker, so to speak. Uh, Lesbian lifestyle, which back then was very like bohemian. This was like the 1950s, late 50s, right?
Yeah, at that point, yeah.
Maybe 1960. Um, and so I don't think she would have liked anything that Homer Wells was doing if it wasn't what she was doing, which was just like being roaming around from job to job, never really stable.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't think she would have liked him at all, and that's just kind of her attitude coming out.
And she's
But it does use the effect of it is like okay, someone is finally calling out
right.
Homer's bullshit.
And she's
But
upset by it too. She's like crying, like kind of disappointed, like kind of she's shocked at how it turned out. And I'm thinking of it now that we're talking about it. You know, Melanie's almost like the opposite of Homer, where Homer's constantly like trying to find the rules so that he can follow them, you know, and be a good little boy.
mhm,
But Melanie is constantly trying to discover the rules so she can break them and do her own thing, you know. She's like the opposite of Homer, but they both were like unadopted, spending their entire life in this orphanage. I mean, I think Melanie's like 4 years older or something than Homer, so she's like 24 before she leaves the orphanage.
mhm.
And even like the nurses and like Larch are just like, well, she's 24. What's she still doing here? You know,
Yeah.
she's not, you know, you're an adult now, honey. But yeah, so she's like almost like an opposite of Homer in that regard. But she ends up being happier than him at that moment, at least. Uh,
Mhm.
which maybe that's what's disappointing her was that she's kind of coming to the realization that, you know, everybody has their own kind of issues, or I don't know, but like I just love that scene. It was satisfying for me. It was the most satisfying part of the book, uh, where Melanie, this kind of, you know, brash, violent orphan girl comes in and just sets it all straight.
Mhm.
It was just
Yeah,
such a
that
powerful
definitely like a
moment.
really,
Yeah.
yeah, really powerful scene. Yeah.
And the fact that Homer doesn't really know what to say and he's kind of like hadn't thought about it that way. He was still waiting and seeing 15 years later, you know?
Yeah. And I think it's just like, it's someone who had like been there for what, less than an hour or something,
Yeah.
and is already able to size up his situation. And if she can see it, everyone can see it. And it means he's just been living this phony lie like for years. And
Yeah.
everyone knows it. And no one's told him, right?
Yeah. And it's almost like it's all falling apart at this 15 years later here too, because only a few pages past that on page 515 to 516, Wally and Homer have this weird kind of tense moment where they go and they go out together and then Wally, you know, when they come back, you know, Wally, it's almost like Garp here. He turns the headlights off, right? And they kind of are driving in the dark. It feels like flying, you know. like in Garp would do with his kids in the world according to Garp. And Wally says, they do that on the road and they come back to the house. He said, that was flying, Wally said. When they pulled into the driveway ahead of them, gleaming in the headlights, the wheelchair was parked and waiting. When Homer carried Wally from the Jeep to the wheelchair, Wally let both his arms lock around Homer's neck. Don't ever think I'm not grateful to you for all you've done, old boy, Wally told Homer, who put him very gently in the chair. Come on, Homer said. No, I mean it. I know how much you've done for me. I don't usually get the opportunity to say how grateful I really am, Wally said. He kissed Homer smack between the eyes. Then, and Homer straightened up, clearly embarrassed. You've certainly done everything for me, Wally, Homer said, but Wally dismissed this with a wave. He was already wheeling himself towards the house. It's not the same, old boy, Wally said, and Homer went to park the Jeep. And I was just noticed that because I was like, there's kind of this tense thing where Wally is grateful. He's almost saying thank you to Homer because he understands, I'm paralyzed, I'm this thing, and without you, maybe my life would have been different, worse.
Mhm.
But also, there's this tense thing where it's like, yeah, you have a child with a woman I love who, and I never got to.
Mhm.
I don't know. There was just this tension, and I was actually something that I wish would be explored a little more. The kind of conflict between Wally and Homer being in love with the same woman, having sex with the same woman regularly, in
Well,
this kind of
Wally's not
love
having sex
triangle.
with her.
Well, remember he says they imply that he still has function, but he can't. Yeah, he can't. He's sterile from the infection.
Oh, okay.
But supposedly, he makes a point of saying that like, it still works. It still works. Like when he comes back, for the first time. But
Oh,
that's
okay.
that's weird too, because I think if you're paralyzed, you can still have function, like get an erection, depending on how injured you are. But you can't quite feel it, right? Because it's you not have feeling in your legs and stuff, below the waist.
Yeah.
So it's a little different, for Candy to have sex with him. He would, obviously, don't have to get too mechanical with, but he would have to be, on the bottom and she would be on top, kind of. That's the only way
Mhm.
it would work, with somebody who couldn't use their legs. So there's like things like that. Maybe it's like more, I don't know, hard to keep your dignity in a situation like that.
Mhm.
I mean, but yeah, I don't know. It just this strange relationship between Wally and Homer that I feel like is a missed opportunity from somebody like Irving. I feel like would really address something like that. And
Yeah.
maybe that's one of the things I was like, huh, I wonder why this wasn't addressed more because it would have been a great part if they had some type of fist fight or something.
Yeah. I mean, what I get out of that scene a lot is just this whole like, and this happened in A Prayer for Owen Meany too, where he's always addressing this like, well, without these things happening, then this wouldn't have happened, right? You had to have like everything happens for a reason,
Yeah.
and it was like Wally and Candy showing up that gave
Absolutely.
him a whole new life. So he like, uh, I mean, he wouldn't have Angel
And they were
if
very
it weren't
generous
for
to him.
Wally.
They let him stay with them. They gave him a job. Like they drove him like they were very generous to him.
Yeah,
Where he was, that's why he's like, oh, well, Wally, you gave me everything. And Wally's just, it's not the same, old boy, and
yeah,
it kind of just wheels away from him. Like, don't make it worse than it is here. Like, and I think that is a moment, I think those moments are tender because I think a lot of us miss them, right? We were like, we are grateful for people in our lives, but it's rare that we tell them that.
yeah.
And I mean, I always try to make a point to say that because because of that very reason to people that are important to me, my parents, friends, et cetera,
Mhm.
because it is something that you don't think about. You think it's implied, and it is implied, it is implied between, especially loving relationships, whatever they are. But like, it does feel good to hear it, like it does make it like once it's said, it's more real.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe that's about what same thing happens. This happens to Homer all the time. You talk about like when Large tells him in the letter that, I'm not sorry that I love you to say that I love you.
Mhm.
And Homer's kind of tearing up reading that because he realizes he's like, I love you too. And none of them had said it to each other until Large did angry in that letter, because Homer wasn't coming back. Uh, and it almost is like this strange thing of like a father almost being disappointed in their son for not like, taking over the family business or something like, but it's an orphan, so it's a little different, but like also, it's the same. I don't know with that stuff because I'm thinking even of like the nurse Angela. There's like a brief scene even after that, page 529, when Nurse Angela, they're like, I think it's when after uh Larch dies or right before it, where there's just a brief little thing and it's on its own line on page 529 where Nurse Angela says, "Please come home, Homer." Nurse Angela whispered, "Please come home." And that's it.
Mhm.
And yeah, it was one of the few times that Nurse Angela fell asleep when she was on duty, and that first time ever that she fell asleep in the boys' sleeping room. Yeah, it is kind of, again, his name being Homer, this kind of please come home, Homer. Please come home. This old nurse that like literally raised him from birth is whispering almost like a prayer, to herself in this dark room, sitting on the bed that he used to sleep in that, the boys' sleeping quarters.
Mhm.
And just, yeah, like this kind of praying for Homer to come back and take his spot here. And then shortly after that, we get to the kind of Homer where that last chapter breaking the rules, right? With Homer kind of realizes the magnitude of his situation
Yeah.
about and they call it playing God. But that's what's interesting too, because reading this novel, and we're going to get into this as we get to the film here, I had seen the movie. So I thought that Mr. Rose and his daughter Rose Rose were going to be more important to the story, and they are important to the story, but they really don't come in until like the last chapter.
It's yeah, right at the very end. And it does a good job because it's sort of like it does set up a situation where you can see why Homer goes back to um, St. Cloud's and takes over for Larch.
Yeah, on page 576, when he's kind of having his realization,
Mhm.
he said, Nurse Caroline was tough, but where would Nurse Edna and Nurse Angela go? I think this is after he learns that Larch died accidentally through an ether overdose. And what would happen to Miss Grogan? Worried Homer Wells. He remembered the hatred and contempt in Melanie's eyes. If Melanie were pregnant, I would help her, he thought. And with that thought, he realized that he was willing to play God. A little. Wilbur Larch would have told him there was no such thing as playing a little God. When you were willing to play God at all, you played a lot. And it's kind of Homer's realization of like figuring out that like, oh, this has been my destiny in a way. Like everything in my life was leading for me to do this. Uh,
Yeah,
to take a
exactly.
place and take over this orphanage and yeah, perform these, he calls it the Lord's work, right? Larch called it the Lord's work for a reason, like playing God, literally, yeah, like that was his what he was trained for. I don't know. He just kind of realizes the magnitude of the situation, and it's interesting that like, it takes Rose, Mr. Rose's daughter, who gets pregnant because Mr. Rose rapes her.
Mhm.
It took that situation for him to understand that the 20 years that he'd been trying to run from his destiny was always going to come back to him in this way, right? Where he would be asked to do what Larch asked him to do 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And how he went about that would determine, yeah, the rest of his days. And, at this point in the story, they changed this in the movie, which we'll get to shortly here. We're almost done with the novel, that like, where for 20 years he hadn't performed an abortion like he said he wouldn't. But
Mhm.
then, he finally comes to this realization when he loses his father or the father figure in his life that it kind of all starts to make sense to him. And he realizes, that famous scene in the movie. And then in this too, I think it's page 582, when he's giving the abortion. And Rose, she's like, "Please, have you done this before?" Rose asked him. Her voice was muffled under the mask. "I'm a good doctor. I really am," Homer Wells told her. "Just relax and breathe normally." And I just noticed it because it's the first time that Homer refers to himself as a doctor. He always would say the entire novel, 580 pages previously, be like, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a doctor. I didn't go to medical school. Like, I'm not a doctor, I don't want to be a doctor. And then
Yeah.
20 years later, he's like, actually, I am a doctor. I'm a good doctor. Like, you know,
Mhm.
and he does it and it's perfect. And like, he was really good at it. And yeah, I don't know, just Homer admitting he's a doctor. And then, of course, in the movie, there's that iconic scene where I'm in the doctor business. He says it out loud and then realizes, oh, I am a doctor, even though I didn't have that piece of paper.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, I always just I think I do like the fact that he went back to St. Cloud's.
right,
It just because it really shows how much gratitude he has towards Larch, that he is willing to almost act like a son and carry on his footsteps, kind of showing gratitude to what gave him his life, which includes, he eventually had a son,
right.
Angel. And so it's shows like a gratitude for his own life, that he goes back to St. Cloud's and helps there. And he has an appreciation for, you know, women who are in an unfortunate circumstance, like Rose. And it, I think it kind of clicks with him, like, oh yeah, I can think it's murder, but I can also think that it is of good use to society.
Right.
He's able to hold those two thoughts in his head at the same time.
And understand, yeah, it's not so simple. Yeah, as
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's much more complicated than just, oh, I'm playing God, or even, oh, I'm killing something. It's much more complicated
Mhm.
because there's more than one life involved in all, and this is why this is every election cycle, everybody knows, it comes out, right? This is a topic every election cycle. It's funny because the laws haven't really changed all that much. I guess you could point to the Supreme Court decision, but like for my entire lifetime until that moment, the laws
Mhm.
literally changed like zero, like never, like
Yeah.
ever. But for some reason, it was always a topic when it came up every cycle here. But yeah, I mean, let's get to the last line here where it comes up, and we've talked about this, dude. Like, it's almost like and all this speaks to Irving's craft. Almost every book we've read, it feels like everything is moving towards that last final line,
Hmm.
everything, all of these thousands and thousands of words. And, the last couple paragraphs that end the whole thing, he says, and as he grew older, Homer Wells would take special comfort in an unexplained revelation he found in the writings of Wilbur Larch. Tell Dr. Stone, Dr. Larch wrote, and this was his very last entry. These were Wilbur Larch's last words. There is absolutely nothing wrong with Homer's heart. Except for the ether, Homer Wells knew there had been very little that was wrong with the heart of Wilbur Larch. To Nurse Edna, who was in love, and to Nurse Angela, who wasn't, but who had in her wisdom named both Homer Wells and Fuzzy Stone. There was no fault to be found in the hearts of either Dr. Stone or Dr. Larch, who were, if there ever were, princes of Maine, kings of New England. And that's literally the last line of the entire novel,
Yeah.
where it's kind of this pure of heart thing, right? The princes and kings that he's referring to is an internal thing. It isn't literally being a king or a prince, right? It's this internal having a good heart, and a good heart in more ways than one, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. Which
Yeah.
is just a beautiful, yeah.
And they both did. And yeah, it's just like a beautiful ending. Um, and yeah, Dr. Stone, I guess we didn't explain
Oh,
that,
the alias.
yeah, um, Homer Wells has to come back under the name of Dr. Stone because Larch wrote uh, to the board about a fake doctor who he named after one of the dead, an orphan that had died years ago. I don't know. It's kind of a complicated subplot, but yeah, well, Homer Wells is called Dr. Fuzzy Stone. That's the name he has to come back under, not Homer Wells. So
Yeah, it's they cut that part out of the movie and it's a good thing they do
yeah,
because
yeah,
it does it kind of like makes it a little more I mean obviously makes it interesting when you're reading, but then when you're in the movie it would just be another like oh we have to explain this.
yeah. I mean, they
Yeah.
put Fuzzy Stone's death in there, but that's just because they wanted to get a little tearjerker moment, which
Yeah.
worked. Yeah,
They play down the role, they shorten the time frame. But yeah, let's move to the movie now since we got
yeah.
through the whole novel. Uh 2.5 hours on the novel. We'll so the Cider House film came out in 1999, so pretty much 15 years later from when he wrote the novel, or at least
Mhm.
when it was published. Again, the details. I don't even know how to say this director's name. Hallstrom.
Yeah, Lasse Hallström.
Okay. So that was the director, and then Irving did the screenplay himself, which is rare. Also rare that a writer adapts their own novel and it's very good.
Yeah.
Usually they get too bogged down by like the little details that they love and want to conclude. Like I noticed that whenever Stephen King writes a screenplay of his own stuff,
Mhm.
it's always worse than if they had like somebody else adapt it, you know? It like
Mhm.
he kind of gets caught up in the wrong things of like, his baby, his project here kind of stuff. Uh but yeah, okay, so we get into the movie and this is the one you and I had said this was our introduction to this entire story, you know. And I think most people's introduction to this
Yeah.
story. Yeah.
I mean, I remember when it came out, I was interested in it because I did like Lasse Hallström. He did a film called My Life as a Dog. It's a good, he's from one of the Scandinavian countries, maybe like Finn or Norway. I don't know.
Sounds Scandinavian, yeah.
Yeah, but it was a good coming of age story. And even his films, he's done a lot of like really good American films. But his cinematography, the look to his films are always really good. So, I mean, I think he was a perfect director because just the look of this film, like
Yes.
those bright fall New England colors, it's just like this cozy, like every shot is like really cozy and warm. Yeah,
And
just really beautiful.
and that kind of gray overcast and like New England winters, like
Hmm.
kind of yeah, how cold the snow, the landscape, how rural. Yeah, really good. And there's a bunch of changes, and we'll get into those listeners, obviously. But yeah, very scaled down, but scaled down in a very good way to make the story a little bit, easier to follow as a viewer. First thing I noticed was, yeah, Dewey from Malcolm in the Middle
Yes.
is Fuzzy Stone. They use Mary Agnes as Melanie, uh,
Mhm.
whereas in the novel, Mary Agnes, we didn't even go into it because she's a minor character, but she's just another orphan at the orphanage who's been there, too long. She's like 12, 13, 14 before she gets adopted. Uh, but she's the one that in the novel, she's the one that Melanie always picks on because she's like the second oldest girl that's still there. But in the movie, they just make her kind of the Melanie character, but not as violent and brash. But in the
He's more
very
like
or beginning of it, sorry, what?
he's more like very like sexual
Yeah,
in the
more
way.
sexual, which is kind of like when Melanie was, kind of offering to suck him off and stuff when he was like 14
Yeah,
to get him to do things for her.
yeah, she's kind of violently sexual almost, like a little very forceful. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
And what was I thinking? Yeah, Mary Agnes. And that first scene where she's just like, yeah, she's like almost trying to seduce Homer. Uh,
yeah. No, when she is trying to force him to kiss her or something like that.
she's like sticking her tongue out, like
Something
asking
like
him
that.
to like look at it because she bit it or something.
Yeah.
But it's like, very sexual, blah, blah, blah. And they add this kind of composite character, Buster,
Hmm.
played by Kieran Culkin, uh, which actually works for the for the film, because it kind of gives like Homer this kind of, instead of all the boys that you learn about that Homer was friendly with as they are in the orphanage, Fuzzy Stone, Curly Day, and all all these other different orphans that he's always interacting with. They kind of collapse that all down into Buster here, so that he has like this kind of, and Buster's like another like second oldest kid that's still there, like boy who's never been adopted. He's like 13, 14.
Yeah. And
Uh,
Irving kind of uses I mean, he only does it in the beginning, which kind of bothers me when they do this in films where they have a narrator in the beginning telling
right,
you like what's going on. And it's Michael Caine, and he's talking about, St. Cloud here in St. Clouds, you
right.
know.
His kind of
Um,
diary entries.
yeah, and it tells about the orphanage and everything that's going on. Gives you a quick synopsis. We don't get anything about his history like we do in the novel. It collapses that first 125 pages or so into like less than 5 minutes.
Right. Just to like,
During the credits are still playing, but
right.
by the time it says directed by Lasse Hallström, like yeah, those first 125, 150 pages are like just what's going on.
Yeah. And it's actually because there's so much information that's given to you in that sense. And it does it so well in the movie. You kind of hear the Larch's narration, you see him taking Homer back. They cut out one of his adoptions, which is the one when he's like 12 and those like adventurous people like get killed and he just kind of walks back, which okay, you have two is enough. You don't need all three if we're doing an adaptation here to speed things
Yeah, we,
up.
we get the point. He
Yeah.
a lot of families didn't want him. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And then they just open up to where he's like, yeah, 20, and he's the oldest boy and the oldest person in the at the orphanage, and he's literally always wearing a doctor's coat and like helping Dr. Larch. You kind of see it right away, which is a great way to just kind of gloss over, yeah, all of that stuff. Um, Also, I'd say like, Homer seems, I think the way Tobey Maguire plays him, and I think Maguire was a very perfect cast for it. Like he just less autistic, more naive than autistic. Uh,
yeah.
uh, it
Like that
works.
rural New England naivete. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And
like yeah.
I was also thinking like kind of early on in the film, like when the notes I jotted down here, where I was thinking this film was so popular it won the Oscars, and I was thinking, did the movie make this book's reputation? Even though it came out so many years later. And I mean, that happens all the time. It's not uncommon. Listeners know we've talked about this with a bunch of books. Sometimes the books are, popular for a book, but then a movie comes out and that's when they get like the big sales usually,
Mhm.
become like iconic and elevated. We've talked about this on the podcast before. Listeners go listen to this like Stephen King episode we did where, yeah, very clearly that the movies would help make the reputation for a book. And I was just wondering, I was like, huh, do we think that that was the case here? I don't know, just thinking about it as I was watching it, as I was seeing the story play out.
I think so. I mean, because I've never heard of anyone reading the book.
Right,
And it's also
exactly. Yeah.
like it's like Stephen King. It's like with it. It's
Yeah.
like everyone's seen the movie, but I mean, not many people have read the book. Uh, like I mean, I guess anyway, people now haven't read the book. I guess when it
Yeah.
came out, people were more interested, but people look at a 1,200 page Stephen King book and are like, no, I'll just see the movie and like
Yeah.
I'll just say the book is good. The
And
same thing
that
with
too,
Cider.
like, and that book is, I mean, I read it. We didn't cover it on the pod. Maybe we should
Yeah,
eventually.
I read it last 2 years ago, 2 summers ago. Yeah, I was it was pretty
It's,
shocking. I
yeah.
was shocked.
It is like my thing on it, yeah, when you read the actual book, it does fall apart after a while, and it almost gets too big. Like, it
Mhm.
almost is like too big because, and you can just tell, yeah, he was clearly doing a shitload of cocaine while writing it. And then it's why the movies tend to work a little better because they have to like cut out all the excess, like,
Yeah.
yeah. But even the movies, I think, all fall apart because like the story kind of falls apart after a while. But it just gets too big and too universal to this. Yeah, I don't know.
There's some extent. I mean, Misery and Pet Cemetery, Carrie, The Shining. I think those still work.
Oh yeah, they do. Better than
And
the
the
books.
original, I think,
Yeah.
works. Where it is pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, and I was noticing too, J.K. Simmons makes an appearance. Lot
Yes.
of big actors in this.
hmm
I think he only has like two speaking lines. Nobody
Yeah.
even knew who J.K. Simmons was.
Yeah. This was probably, I don't know, maybe Oz was on.
That's true. I think Oz had
So,
aired by then. Yeah.
but not too many people watched Oz back then.
Yeah. It
So
was
then
like
that,
the first hour-long drama. Like,
yeah, it was mostly like when those DVDs came out or it was streaming services that Oz got more popular. But
yeah, post Sopranos and on-demand streaming and like the right before the streaming wars happened,
Mhm.
when you had cable or something, they had an on-demand feature, which was like new when I was like in high school.
Yeah,
And you could, if you subscribe to HBO, well, you could go to the Comcast on-demand menu and like watch some of their old shows. That was
yeah.
like the first beginnings of, nobody knew it was, Netflix and all was going to become by that point. But I remember that was the first time I watched Oz, was like doing something like that on demand because I was too young when it actually aired. And then you just hear about it because it was like kind of the first prestige hour-long drama TV show that HBO ever did.
Mhm.
And you go back and you watch it, it's actually really good. Like it's actually very good.
Yeah, it is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And JK plays a great character in that too. But yeah, dude, this pre-Oscar nominations for JK and all that pre-Oscar win, pre-Spider-Man, dude. He was in the Spider-Man meme with him, right? Like with the kind of the reporter or whatever. This
Yeah.
that didn't even exist yet.
There's no whiplash. Yeah.
Yeah. The you serious? Like the kind of like the laughing at like interesting. Yeah, another movie with him and Tobey Maguire only a few years later. The Spider-Man stuff, but I laughed at that. I was like, oh yeah. And then yeah, we have Charlize Theron, dude. We have Paul Rudd. We have Michael Caine and Tobey Maguire.
Yeah, Paul Rudd, I totally forgot he was in it as
Same, yeah.
he shows up as Wally. And a nice thing that they do in this is like, so when Wally and Candy they get to the orphanage, Wally's already in the military, like
Yeah.
he's about to be stripped out, right? So I mean that just cuts out uh, so much of that story,
Yeah.
in a good way. And then he Tobey Maguire kind of hits it off with them, and then they take him out um, to the apple orchard, and it's just maybe like a scene of Michael Caine, like Dr. Larch, expressing how disappointed he is with Homer for going with them, and
Yeah.
that's it. Yeah, and it's just really good, fast paced. Kind of ties like it cuts out a lot of the fat
Yeah.
um, that we didn't need. And Paul Rudd is actually really good because he's so like such a punchable face, that guy. Man, and like Wally is kind of, he's kind of an annoying character, especially in this,
Yeah.
because like one of the things Irving did is just cut out like all of Wally's like sympathetic like character traits. Like
Yeah.
he's in the military, so he's patriotic, so maybe he's a good guy, but other than that, like
He's
he's just
nice
kind
to
of
everybody, but like he's kind of like, jockey
condescending.
dope, like
And
just like
he's a little condescending.
yeah.
I think just some of the workers. I don't know. He's not he's doesn't come across very well. Worse than he does in the book.
Yeah. Another one of the big things that makes, I think, a huge difference in the story, Homer stays in the cider house
hmm
with in the movie where he doesn't
Yeah.
stay in the cider house in the novel. And it kind of changes Homer's position too. So one, it changes his authority where he's not like a special guest of the family that owns the orchard in this, where he just like lives in the cider house with the migrant workers. And it makes him kind of more of an underdog, or like having something to overcome. he's not accepted as like Wally's friend, staying in Wally's room with him, like he is in the novel. So it kind of puts him in like a different position, which I think works better for the story, even. Like, they even make a joke out of it where like they show, and he's so naive, he's an orphan, he's kind of naive about this, but like when they say that they introduce him to Mr. Rose and the migrant workers, and they're all black that came from North Carolina, and again, this is supposed to be the 40s, listeners. Um, and so like they make a joke in the movie with like he's staying with us, like, and they look at him and it's because he's white that they're like shocked.
Mhm.
But like they don't say it, and then like Mr. Rose just kind of laughs and is like, "Well, I do believe we're making history here today," like like kind of like
Yeah.
thing, and like Homer doesn't quite understand why he's saying that, but like because he's just so naive as an orphan. So like that makes it a little bit better. It smooths everything up, speeds it all up, like you were saying. So now Mr. Rose and his daughter Rose are in the film right away. We're introduced to them, and we're introduced to the relationship and how Mr. Rose kind of runs the workers, as kind of a foreman.
Yeah. Which was never like in the book that like it was entirely different cast of workers that he was working with. Um, like it was a mix of white workers and there were black workers.
Right.
Uh, and it was you could tell there wasn't like this like oh he's a white boy like
Right.
type relationship in the novel. Like they did sort of accept him and he was just another worker.
It
But
was
there was
that
still those interactions that kind of got us used to like what would have been going on then because it is a little odd that
right. And then
he
and
wasn't
then
treated.
sorry.
Yeah, like it's just a little odd he wasn't treated as like an other coming in, but the way they set it up in the movie where it's Mr. Rose, all black workers, Mr.
Right.
Rose runs the orchard. Yeah, it works out well.
In the novel, there's a scene in the novel that I didn't highlight, but I mean I it was just a touching scene to me where I thought it was just very informative, and it kind of sets that up without saying it. Irving does this brilliantly without laying it on too thick and saying directly, well, it was 1940s and there was segregation, right? But when they're talking about the Ferris wheel, when they're sitting on the cider house roof and Homer is explaining it to the migrant workers what it is because they don't know what it is.
Mm.
And he's naively explaining it to him, and they're laughing at him. He's like, "Well, you just ride it. You go around in a circle." And they're like, "What? That's ridiculous." He thinks you ride it, like kind of like making fun of him. And Mr. Rose kind of takes him aside and is like, Homer, they don't need to hear about that. And it's not said explicitly, but if you know about the history, it's because back in the day there, they were literally like it was segregated, so they wouldn't let like black people into the carnival. There would be like they would call them back in the day like a Negro Day or something where they would let the black people come to the carnival. Like it was like segregated to that point. And I think, we tend to forget that now because it's just so shocking that like anybody would do that now, especially if you're born, in the 80s, like I was. It was kind of, that was already over. But like still, it just like I remember Toni Morrison had this in Beloved. There was just kind of a thing that like it was unsaid, but it was like a tender thing. And I think the way the movie does it very quickly with him just staying in the cider house, not having to do that elaborate scene with the Ferris wheel and stuff, just so smooth, just smooths it out, gets everything we need to get out of it, and then just like makes it keep running so quickly, fast paced. Really well done how they kind of include that. And again, it's not laid on too thick. It isn't explicitly stated. It's just kind of implied, very artistically, like, oh, you're supposed to understand this. The kind
Mhm.
of white black segregation dynamic in the 1940s, even in Maine.
And like every like when you're writing a movie, there has to be something like that that kind
Right.
of hooks you into the plot. And I mean, yeah, there's a war going on at the time, but like if you can even draw upon it in like racial dynamics that are going on at the time. Like, I mean, back then this wasn't like woke stuff going on. This
Right.
is just
Yeah.
like people describing what actually happened.
Right. The
Um,
reality. And it was kind of a thing. Like there were always these kind of like, very heartfelt, stories about that dynamic. Yeah. Like,
yeah.
where with this was right around the time, Legend of Bagger Vance was coming out, like all of these types of movies,
Mhm.
you know, uh, about that. But yeah, so I mean, and it's important to the story. I mean, it's a huge part of the story,
Yeah,
without explicitly stating it, like it is a huge part of the story for that. But
yeah. So it has to be drawn out a little bit more on film just because it's more engrossing for the viewer.
right.
And it's a good hook to go on. Um,
And there were also just like there were some great cut scenes. My favorite cut scene in the whole thing, and I guess this speaks to Hallstrom's directing, where like Larch is writing letters back and forth to Homer. And at one point, Larch is talking to the nurses, and they're like, "Well, why should he come back?" And Larch says something about like, you know, he says something about like Homer's a field hand. What's keeping him there? What could possibly be keeping him there? He's working as a field hand, and the film just cuts automatically to Charlize Theron like leaning out of the car, like looking gorgeous.
mhm,
And that's the entire thing where it was just so beautiful, like just fantastic cut scene that tells you so much without
mhm.
saying anything, like
Yeah.
he's like, what could possibly keep him there? He's picking apples for God's sakes. And then they just cut to this beautiful woman leaning out the car towards him. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, that's what's keeping him there. He's in love with this beautiful woman. Like,
And it just sort of like simplifies in a good way, like everything down to like, yes, like Homer is here and staying here because he's in love with Candy. Like, look at this hot woman. Yes, he's
yeah.
in love with her. And it makes everything like viewers immediately able to understand that rather than having to go through the 200 pages that Irving does trying to like convince us of their love, like whether it's real or whether Homer doesn't know what love is. Like
Yeah.
he's a much more structured, evenly structured character here.
Yeah, and it just, yeah, I mean, they clean it up to a point too where I think the timeline is flattened too. So instead of 20 years, it's like 2 years. Like the whole
Yeah,
movie takes place over the course of 2 years. And
because
honestly,
they don't have a child, right?
yeah, they
The
cut the child
Yeah, they cut the
out.
child out, so there's no angel.
Yeah, which
Um,
also kind of speeds it up. They cut out the kind of years of Homer living with Wally and Candy and this like thruple thing, like raising like Homer and Candy's kid. Like they cut all that out because which is good because it like that would drag it down a little bit. We'd have to like spend another few hours explaining all that.
yeah, because does Wally die in the movie? Wally
No.
just dies. Does he come back?
No, he comes back, but it's very subtle where it's like they cut to a scene where Candy and Homer are on the dock and they're talking about it because they're in
Mhm.
love, obviously, and then they find out that Wally is back. They didn't know that he was coming back. And then they show that scene where Homer's leaving with the migrant workers in the truck and he meets eyes with Candy as she's helping
Yes.
Wally out of the car into a wheelchair.
Mhm.
And that's very cinematic, very, very cinematic way to do it. So I understand why they did that. Dude, and I was just thinking like the actors were so good. Obviously, Michael Caine is fantastic in everything he does, although he does slip in and out of an American accent, I noticed.
Yeah,
But we can forgive him for that because he's Michael Caine.
and it's
Uh,
also like a main thing, so
yeah.
sometimes they do have just a weird way of talking, so you can kind of like it blends in a little bit, you know.
Honestly, even if he did a British accent, it would have worked, dude. Like it would have worked fine, even if he did a straight
I,
Brit accent.
oh yeah, yeah.
The actors, I mean, Tobey Maguire was perfectly cast as kind of this dopey, naive young guy. The actor that plays Mr. Rose, dude, what was his name?
Delroy Lindo.
Dude, unbelievable.
He's
Like
I
he
mean,
is so
he's
good.
amazing in everything. And
Yeah.
that guy is such a good actor.
Dude, his
He was
eyes.
in
Yeah. He has this intense, yeah, just so good. Like, ugh. And he captures that very complex dynamic of Mr. Rose,
mhm.
so well, where he's doing that kind of cheerful kind of, oh, yep, yep, like I'm a farmhand, like doing that for the
Yeah.
white folks, but then like flips out, he just that actor just captures it so perfectly.
Yeah, when he was telling Toby Maguire, because they had like it's sort of an alternate scene involving like reading the Cider House rules.
Yeah.
So like the rules were on um in the cabin that they lived in, but
And none of them could read. Yeah.
none of them could read. So Toby Maguire starts reading the rules, and they're like, "Nope, don't read those." Like they're just like stopping. Like those weren't put there by us; they were put there by someone else. And it goes into that whole I guess resisting the slave mentality type
Right.
of thing. That again is kind of hooking on like these racial dynamics. That was
And they're from North Carolina where that was more explicit, like written into the law, you know?
yeah, yeah,
Like
it
there is a
was.
point in the novel where Wally says something about how like the reason there aren't any segregation laws in Maine is just because there are no like black people. Like
Mhm,
so that like but he said if like they were, there probably would be.
mhm.
Whereas you go to North Carolina, well, those laws were in place for hundreds of years, you know, post, Civil War, they were still in place,
Yeah.
for like 100 more years here. So like they're coming from that place, so they understand it even better than Homer or any of even Wally or some of the Candy
Mhm.
understand it. Kind of the barrier in there. But yeah, that actor, man, his eyes are just so intense, and like the way, even the scene where he's dying, like after Rose stabs him and then he stabs himself. And he just telling him, he's like, I killed my own self. That's, like just kind of do it. Like, man, that actor, dude, is just so fucking good. It's like,
Yeah.
I was like, my God, this guy can act, dude. Like,
No,
holy shit.
he's really good. I mean, everything he's in, he's always good. One of my favorite movies of his, God, I saw it in the theater. It was a Spike Lee movie called Clockers. It,
Not familiar,
um, yeah, is Mekhi Phifer and Delroy Lindo and Harvey Keitel, and man, Scorsese produced it, I think. But it was about just like crack dealing in gangs in New York City and the police. And it was based on a book by Richard Price, which is really good also. But man, that movie, yeah, Clockers, yeah, Delroy Lindo, that was the first movie where he caught my attention, and I think he was in another one called Fresh. That was kind of like a similar thing, but like trying to like help a kid like get out of the hood or something like that. But
he just has a
yeah,
presence like on
amazing
screen,
actor.
yeah, that just captures, even if it's a small role like Cider House or something, like he just has this
Mhm.
presence that is just so great. Yeah, and
I,
he really, if it was a lesser actor playing that minor role of Mr. Rose, it would never have been as good, like, yeah.
no, I mean acting by everyone was really good. Even like they had like odd casting, like Heavy D played one of the farm workers. Um, I think he played Peaches.
Peaches,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's like Heavy D, like from Heavy D and the Boys. Like, yeah, okay.
yeah.
And then Erica Badu played Rose, and like she's beautiful, and
Yeah.
but I've never seen her in an acting role. I don't think. I think Cider House is the only one I've seen her in, but she did a really good job too. I was
Yeah.
really impressed with all the actors.
That, and I was impressed with the adaptation too. Obviously, we have Irving doing his own work, which makes it a little bit better. But it just felt like, yeah, they kept all the right things, moved all the right things around to fit still. It's like a textbook way to adapt a novel, you know? Because you have to cut things, but like, what are you cutting and how much? How much are you going to rearrange the story
Hmm.
to make it fit for like a different medium? And I think that Irving just did it almost like you and I texted about this, almost like it was like a revision of the novel. Like, it was streamlined in such a way that it had almost more impact on me than the novel did.
Hmm.
And I had seen the movie before, but again, not in like, yeah, like 20 years or something. But I still remember parts of it just because it was such a touching movie. And I was thinking even the ending of this, like the ending almost was more satisfying, more complete with Homer walking up that hill, with that doctor bag.
Hmm.
Yeah, just
Actually, because I think really also the director that, Lasse Hallström, and the cinematography, it's just his images are like so powerful and
yeah.
so beautiful. That's one of the reasons that I think that this works because Hallström's able to tell a story just with images. He doesn't necessarily even need like dialogue. Um,
And
and the dialogue is great. Like the story's great, pared down perfectly. And also, I think Dr. Larch's death in the film is so much more heartbreaking.
yeah,
Um,
with
because you
nurse.
see the like he breaks his hand with the ether glass and there's blood and he's just sort of falling asleep peacefully. And in the book, it, you kind of get this story of him taking ether and he imagines that he's like back in Europe or in France and a prostitute is um, propositioning him while he's trying to take care of this like wounded soldier. And eventually he goes back to the prostitute and they get in bed together and they fall asleep together. And that's kind of like when the ether bottle breaks and I guess he vomits. That's all they say is like he vomited. And then it goes right into the cause of death was like respiratory failure or something like that.
Yeah.
And it just is, it's sad, but it's not nearly as heartbreaking as is like just that scene.
And it's a
Um,
brief scene, and then you show the nurse Edna who finds him in the novel too. Well, she finds him very quickly after, and she's like frantically like, Wilbur, Wilbur, like kind of get him to, yeah, it makes it more touching than like she finds him 30, 40 minutes later,
yeah,
where he's doing that already, and then she just kind of holds him like that makes it more touching. And in the novel, you learn that she's in love with him, but in the movie, they actually do a very subtle thing of that too, where she's implied that they have some type of relationship.
like they have sex and
Yeah, like she
that's it.
kisses
Yeah,
him
that's
goodnight when
that's it.
he's in his ether haze and stuff, and she takes the cone out of his hand or something when she finds him.
They do show them like cuddling in bed, like fully clothed and everything, but
Right,
they're just like I think she's like like lying up in bed with him. Um, and they dance, I think, in celebration of something, and they get a little drunk.
right.
Um, but yeah, uh, yeah,
Really
the
good
movie
scene.
does a good job of like kind of just uh, explaining that relationship to us within just a few scenes.
And then it right after that scene, it cuts to Homer reading the letter on his bed in the cider house,
Mhm.
informing him that Larch is dead. And he's just, tears running down his face. Like it hits him all at once, and it's a great visual thing, no dialogue exchanged or anything. You can see it hitting him that like Larch is dead, his father is dead, essentially. Man, imagine finding out about that through a letter. But yeah. And then yeah, it speeds up very quickly where he's okay, I know what I have to do now that Larch is dead. I have to go take my place at the or at the St. Cloud's. Because I was thinking too, because even like having him stay in the cider house and be a worker, whereas in the novel he's 15 years there, he's become almost like a foreman of the orchard. So he's in a position of authority over Mr. Rose.
Yeah.
In the novel, whereas in the movie he's not. So it makes the confrontation in the orchard when he confronts him about having sex with his daughter more risky. It makes it a moment of Homer growing up, coming into his own, right? Maybe they even think of that line, what do you do when you're confronted with evil? You know, Homer Wells kind of takes it up and even maybe naively so goes up to this guy in the middle of it where everybody can hear him and see him and they all know anyway.
Hmm.
Uh
Yeah, that was one thing that was drawn out in the movie was that whole um was her rape and then the suspicion of who the father was. Whereas in the book it's like 20 pages.
yeah.
in the movie it's like, you know, yeah, 20 minutes,
Yeah,
which
the
is a
last
good part of the movie.
yeah. And that kind of confrontation too, right? Like, what business you in? What's your business, Homer? You even know?
Mhm. Yeah.
And then Tobey Maguire, I'm in the doctor business. Yeah. It's like, yeah, Tobey Maguire. Tobey Maguire. There was a lot of lingering on his Tobey Maguire's face where he's doing that kind of Robin Williams smile
Hmm. Yeah.
that that kind of man, I know we're not on video, you can't see, but it's kind of like your head tilted up slightly and it's like
The Garp smile.
yeah,
Yeah.
like the Robin Williams signature kind of there's like a lot of lingering on that. But yeah, man. What else about this? What do we miss of this that we were trying to before we get to the ending of this?
Um,
M-
Melanie is completely cut out.
Melanie. Yeah.
Uh, which is, yeah, that's a big part of the novel is like her, yeah, we keep getting flashes to what she's doing on her search for Homer. But yeah, we don't get that in this, which is probably a good thing. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think like I think if Homer were to be called out like this in the movie for something, it would really taint our view of Homer
He's
that we've had
almost
so far. Yeah.
yeah, he's almost called out by Mr. Rose in it, right? Especially during that thing where he's like, "Yeah, you don't even know what business you're in, Homer. You know, you
Yeah.
have no idea. Like, what are you doing here? Little orphan boy that can read, that can, has this vast knowledge of medical, like, OBGYN medicine. What the hell are you doing out here picking apples, with a bunch of migrant workers, making pennies or something,
Hmm.
picking apples." Uh, and like he's almost confronted in that way. So it's not as extreme with the child and stuff. Like you're not living a lie, but it's kind of like, coming of age. Like, what the hell are you doing? Like, what do you think this is, boy? Like, you're just a 20 something kid. And then he kind of is forced to be like, well, actually, I'm in the doctor business. I think that's what I was always meant to do. His confrontation comes from the characters he's around all the time instead of this character that comes back 20 years later. Which is another great, brilliant adaptation by Irving in the screenplay. There's a reason he won the Oscar for. I think it's won a couple Oscars. So Irving got the Oscar for best adapted screenplay, and there were a few other Oscars that it won. I don't know what. I imagine all the actors were nominated, and I
I think Michael
imagine
Caine won.
Michael Caine. Yeah,
Yeah, I think he won. But I think, the director was nominated, and so was the picture.
right.
I think Tobey Maguire was nominated.
Dude, 1999 would have been a tough year to win an Oscar too, dude. That was a lot of great movies came out in 1999.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that would have been a tough year to win Best Adapted, and Irving won it. So yeah, I don't remember who else was nominated, but I just think of all the movies that came out in 1999, like were so good. There were so many good movies that came out then that year.
yeah. So it won adapted screenplay and supporting actor, and yeah, that was it. It was nominated for score, picture, director, editing, and production design.
Yeah, Toby didn't get nominated.
No,
Makes sense, dude. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's a yeah, that was a Titanic year, right?
I think Titanic was that
Tit
96, 97.
oh, maybe it was.
But I
I
know
don't
The Sixth Sense came out in 99, and I think a bunch of other ones that recently I had just been watching some movies recently that I was like, "Huh, this came out in 99 too." And then I was watching Cider House for this and I was like, "Huh, this came out in 99 too. Damn, 99." I'd
I
forgotten what a
don't
great year that was for film. I
I
think
know it was like,
Goodwill Hunting might have been 99 or something too,
yeah,
or
like
like
Fight
yeah.
Club, Matrix, but
Yeah.
no, that's then too. Saving Private Ryan, Shakespeare
Yeah.
in Love,
Yes. All
Life
these
is
Harvey
Beautiful.
Weinstein produced
Yeah,
movies. Yeah.
yeah.
So I mean it was up against fierce competition. And I mean that's where it gets me to the ending of this too, where like that ending is so good, and it ends with the same line that the novel ends with, which is brilliance. You're only going to get that when you have a great, screenwriter doing the adaptation, but it's in such a different way. It's Homer actually saying the lines to the orphan boys that he's now in charge of. Uh, And for me, and I was texting you about this when I watched it, like there was maybe it was just everything culminating, maybe whatever. I just had a reaction to it in that way. It wasn't like I was bawling, crying, but I was slightly tearing up, choked up slightly at that last thing when he's saying holds the door just like Dr. Larch does and leans in and says, "Good night, you princes of Maine, you kings of New England." And they do a kind of close up on that Robin Williams smile style, where he says it.
Yeah.
And then they cut to the boys, and some of them are giggling, but then they cut to the younger boys who almost feel like comforted by it, because Homer's saying it now and not Larch, blah, blah. But like it just brings it all full circle in a way that was just, I thought was so complete, so satisfying that it's like the ending, I was like, is better than the novel ending. The movie ending is better than the novel ending. Uh, because Homer's even given more of a chance to redeem himself than in the novel.
Yeah.
To come back here walking up the hill and the orphans basically tackle him over because they're so excited to see Homer back. And he realizes, I'm not going to compare it to It's a Wonderful Life because it's not in the same realm. Listeners, go listen to Eric and I talking about It's a Wonderful Life from last Christmas there, where we go into this a little bit more. But there was a sense of that same kind of vibe, finding your home in a place that you felt like you never were, at home, finding your purpose, your I don't know, something about that, that leads that kind of full circle, satisfying ending. Like I said, I don't want to compare it to it too much because I mean, again, listeners, go listen to that episode with Eric and I from like last Christmas where we talk about this in depth. But like, I would consider It's a Wonderful Life literally the greatest movie ever made. If somebody put a gun to my head, I would say that. So, it's not in that realm, but this is a damn good movie. Like this is a damn good movie. Uh, and I know I guess got similar vibes from that. Like this kind of man who was confused, who was didn't quite know what he was looking for, even
Mm.
finding comfort in what was always right in front of his face. That's where I'm
Yeah.
comparing the two, I guess, essentially.
It's
More in
'cause, like,
mood and tone than like anything else. Yeah.
it's because we're not like sad that he left Candy or
Right.
like left life behind. Um,
Right.
and it just, yeah, that scene where the kids are like tackling him, like when he came home because they just love him so much. Like it's just, that's one of those things where it's like, yeah, a picture is worth 1,000 words on something like that. And so it's perfect, visual, uh, to leave on. But
He becomes kind of a father to all these other orphans,
mhm,
the way Larch fathered him. Yeah. He kind of realizes that's what he was always meant to do.
yeah, and the score is really good. The music to the
Yeah.
because it does what like a score is really supposed to do, which is like enhance the emotions that we feel. And when
And you don't
you
even notice it unless you're looking for it because it's so
no,
well done. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, as like watch that movie without sound, it's
Yeah.
not the same. Like with just the dialogue, no score. Like I mean, yeah, the score really moves the film a lot.
Yeah. Back when
Yeah,
they used
especially
to,
that point scene.
oof, back when they used to make great movies, dude. Like they just don't make them like they
Yeah,
used
where
to.
score
Yeah.
didn't have to be like some minimalist like Trent Reznor drum machine
Or yeah, bringing in all
or
these kind of
something like
rock artists to make kind of really kind of off-putting, obscure scores, which can work. Sometimes that works. I like some of Trent Reznor's scores.
yeah, yeah.
Some of them
But
work great as a contrast, but sometimes it's like it is overkill. Yeah, when you like Johnny Greenwood, remember when PTA
mhm.
started using him for everything,
Yeah,
like There
there
Will Be
will like
Blood,
yeah.
and
Mhm.
it really works in There Will Be Blood. I think like the weird kind of metronome shit that they did and like that he did in There Will Be Blood was really good But
Yeah.
then when you see some of the other movies he did with PTA, it's not, it's kind of almost jarring, like too much. Like it's too artistic. It's taking away from the other art form that we're
Yeah.
supposed to be enjoying because it's too much about the score grabbing your attention out of, away from the scene instead of working with the scene. You know, it works in There Will Be Blood because everything's so shocking about that, you know?
Mhm.
With like the I'm thinking of the big scene where the oil rig catches fire in that part
Yeah.
of the score is so fucking good and it's so tense and drawn out and like the boys hurt and like they have to put the fire out and everybody's covered in oil because it's spraying everywhere and it's on fire like that's where it really works because it's so jarring and it's like oh this score is like grabbing your attention to this jarring shit but then like you really I don't know like The Master or you know Phantom Thread or something where I think Johnny Greenwood did all of those scores
Yeah.
it just doesn't quite work as well. It almost takes away from what's happening on screen.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right.
I think there's a lot of like, yeah, imitators of that sound too that try to carry it over into other films.
Yes.
Again, Trent Reznor, I think his scores are good, but there's a lot of imitators. Uh,
I remember
um,
when Birdman came out
mhm.
and that score, remember I forget who did it, but it was a lot of like jazz drums where it was just like jazz percussion. That was like the whole most of the score for that movie. And it worked so fucking well in that movie. And I remember a few TV shows used it after that. Like became like a trend in like filmmaking and TV after that, where the only music you would hear is these kind of like really rhythmic jazz drums, and it works for certain scenes, but then it like became overused very quickly, you know, like and didn't quite fit what it was like being used in, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas it really worked in Birdman, yeah, and a few other places. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, the score was great. What else? Did we miss anything on this movie here that we wanted to
Um,
cover that we didn't?
no, I don't. I don't think so.
Yeah, I think I hit everything
Mm,
too.
yeah, I'm looking at my notes. No, I think I covered everything for the movie. Yeah,
So then the questions we have here, the final one is, you know, book versus movie. Which one do we prefer here?
I got to take movie on this one. Rare, rare occasion. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I think so. Just uh, because I think it just gets more like straight to the point, and it carries the spirit so well of the novel. That yeah, it is better, and I think with the director, it just he really makes some great choices visually that I think connect more than the book did with me. I just felt there are, it is slow in some places,
yeah,
the book, whereas the movie just does not feel that way at one point ever.
yeah. I feel the same way. Where it was, yeah, the movie's definitely better. And this was one where you and I were texting about too. It took us longer to read this one than the other two that we've done with Irving. And we texted about it a little bit. Yeah, maybe it was that lag part, something like that. But for me, uh, yeah, I'm gonna have to pick movie over book. And like you said, I think it's just a more maybe it's the fact that it took like 15 years to get the movie made, so they got to refine the script over and over again or something. But like it just is more smooth, more satisfying. Yeah, I would pick rare instance where the movie is better than the book.
Yeah.
But all right, man. Final thoughts or did we cover it
Um,
all? We hit them all.
yeah, I think we covered it all. I mean, definitely see the movie. Um, you know, the book is good, but it's like one of his longer novels, and it probably shouldn't have been. He probably
Right.
needs to trim some fat in the novel also, but yeah.
Yeah, worth reading, definitely. I mean, as always, and we have the final book coming up here in the Irving saga that we're doing, the Hotel New Hampshire, which is going to be the next project here. Uh, And that's what I'm excited for because that one is like I never hear anyone talk about it.
Yeah, they did make a movie, but I don't, I sometimes people talk about that, but I remember I did see the movie a long time ago. I don't remember anything about it though,
Yeah.
so that's good. That's good. I'll be kind of like starting fresh in a way.
Yeah, same. I've never seen it or read it or even heard of it till we started this project. So it's going to be interesting. And it's a shorter book, so hopefully we'll get through that one faster than we did this one, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
But all right, man. As always, thanks, man. This has been a lot of fun.
All right, no problem, man. Thank you for having me.
Of course, dude. And listeners, you know you're going to hear more of Erik coming up here on the podcast, so stay tuned as we keep going into these projects and the ones we keep creating to keep going. So Erik will be back here. We're going to do some more Irving. We're going to do some other stuff too. But yeah, all right.
Heavy.
Bored.
Heavy.
I am heavy bored.
I may say male is entirely hostile. No! You know,
Resources.
life, friends, is boring. We must not say so. Are you radioactive now?
Inner.
Resources. American resources.
Being bored,
Some activities are intentional, right?
it shows such a lack
Heavy.
of gratitude for life. Bored. I aspire to boredom, I
Heavy.
should say.
Bored. Heavy.
I am heavy
Bored.
Has you the night sweats and the day sweats, pal? Pal, I do.